Reality adjusts to belief. Of all the hidden forces shaping our reality, belief might be the most quietly terrifying. Not because it simply changes your mind, but because, if you look closely enough, it might change reality itself, adjusting the world in ways both subtle and staggering. Imagine a universe so fragile, so fundamentally uncertain, that it would rather twist itself into impossible shapes than let you truly shatter your sense of what's real. If you believe hard enough, not in a childish way, but with an unwavering, obsessive certainty, sometimes the universe bends, not to reward your faith, but to avoid breaking your mind with contradiction. Let's begin with a simple observation. The placebo effect. A sugar pill has no active ingredients, and yet people swallow it with absolute belief, and their bodies heal, pain recedes, sometimes tumors even shrink. Skeptics wave it away as brain chemistry, a trick of endorphins and dopamine. But isn't that still reality adjusting to belief? Your molecules don't know the difference between a lie and a miracle. There are documented cases where people believed so completely in a cure, their bodies followed through as if the medicine were real. For some, it was life or death. Take the man with terminal cancer, told he had months to live, until a doctor gave him a fake drug and he believed. His tumor shrank. The moment he learned it was fake, the cancer came roaring back. His faith warped his biology, then collapsed when doubt returned. Science tries to explain it away, but deep down, even doctors admit, belief changed something the laws of physics couldn't touch. But let's go deeper. There's a phenomenon called blindness denial, or Anton's syndrome. It's when people who are medically totally blind insist they can see. If you show them an empty room, they'll describe its contents. If you ask them to navigate, they'll walk straight into walls and apologize for bumping into invisible furniture. Their brains cannot handle the contradiction, so their minds create a reality that avoids it. Now, imagine this on a grander scale. What if reality itself is designed to avoid contradiction? If you believe hard enough that something is true, the universe doesn't always break your mind. Sometimes, it breaks the rules instead. Think about cult leaders who truly, absolutely believe in their own divinity. Sometimes, their followers see miracles. Statues bleed, wounds vanish, storms appear on command. Was it all mass hysteria, or did the universe simply refuse to let the illusion die? In the annals of history, there are kings who believed their bloodline was divine, so strongly, so publicly, that when they walked through a plague-ravaged city, the disease seemed to part around them. Some call it chance, others selective memory. But ask yourself, if enough people believe a man cannot die, and he doesn't for years beyond what science predicts, did reality just avoid the contradiction? Let's move to quantum physics, where belief has the strangest power of all. The observer effect tells us that simply observing an event can change its outcome. At the smallest scale, particles exist in a cloud of probabilities until we look at them. The act of believing, of expecting a result, collapses the wave, and only then does reality choose. But here's the catch. Multiple experiments have shown that our expectations, even before the measurement, can subtly alter the odds. There are stories of scientists getting impossible results, only to find that their absolute belief in the outcome pushed the universe to comply, just long enough to avoid the contradiction. In one famous experiment, researchers found that if a scientist believed a certain result was inevitable, the data skewed in that direction, even when double-blind procedures were used. It was as if the universe bent, not to make the scientist right, but to avoid making their certainty impossible. When the experiment was repeated by skeptics who doubted the result, the effect vanished. The line between cause and effect blurred, reality flickering between what is and what must be to preserve sanity. But let's bring it closer. Every day people experience this principle in ways they don't recognize. A child is told he's cursed, he believes it, and sickness follows. A performer, terrified of failure, becomes the very thing he fears. A lonely person believes no one sees them. And slowly, invisibility creeps in, as friends stop calling, as if the world is aligning to match belief. You see it in victims of psychological abuse, whose tormentors rewrite their memories so forcefully, the victims can no longer tell what happened. The mind's need for consistency is so great, reality, internal and sometimes external, reshapes itself to avoid contradiction. There's an old story of a village where an oracle declared that the crops would fail unless everyone wore blue on the day of harvest. The people believed so fiercely that anyone who dared to wear another color grew sick, sometimes even died. Was it poison, coincidence, or the universe making sure the oracle's power stayed intact? In countless cultures, shamans heal wounds by chanting over them, their belief echoed by the tribe. And sometimes, the wounds knit closed in front of dozens of eyes, not because of hidden medicine, but because no one, victim or witness, can handle a world where faith means nothing. Reality blinks and changes shape. Even in the modern world, belief carves deep lines into the fabric of the possible. Sports teams win impossible victories because they refuse to believe they'll lose. Prisoners survive starvation because they know, without question, they will be rescued. Sometimes, when the odds are so far against a person that only their belief keeps them moving, the universe seems to adjust, offering just enough of a path forward to make the story hold. You might say it's luck or psychology, but the pattern repeats. When faith reaches a breaking point, the world bends instead. But this isn't always a good thing. The same force that bends reality to belief can also destroy. When enough people believe in a lie, it becomes truth. Wars are started because populations believe their enemies are monsters, until reality supplies the monsters they expect. Economic crashes begin when a rumor is believed so intensely, the market crumbles to match. Belief is not just a soft, gentle force. It's a tectonic pressure that can rip through the world, twisting facts, memories, even laws of nature to prevent minds from collapsing under contradiction. And so, what does this mean for you, living in a world of infinite uncertainty? It means the boundaries of reality are not as solid as you think. It means that belief, held with absolute certainty, is a force not just of personal conviction, but of cosmic adjustment. The universe is not bending to reward your faith, but to protect the fragile mind from the terror of a shattered worldview. The more you refuse to doubt, the more the world, sometimes, shifts just enough to keep you sane. So, next time you feel reality moving around you, next time you see the impossible happen, just because someone refused to accept otherwise, remember, sometimes the universe isn't proving you right, it's saving itself from the consequences of proving you wrong. That's the terrifying, seductive, and ultimately humbling power of belief. The hidden lever that, in moments of true conviction, bends the universe not toward justice, not toward truth, but toward survival. And maybe, just maybe, if you look closely enough at your own life, you'll see the moments where the world bent just a little, not because it had to, but because it couldn't let your mind break. In the end, reality adjusts to belief, not because it's weak, but because the alternative is chaos. And in that fragile balance, every one of us becomes a silent architect of the world we see and the world that sees us back. You are someone's simulation. Imagine waking up one morning with the crushing realization that your entire existence, your struggles, heartbreaks, triumphs, and even the smallest joys are nothing more than variables in someone else's experiment. That your universe, every molecule of it, is a sandbox simulation run for purposes you'll never know, by a consciousness so vast and alien that it regards your reality the way you might watch raindrops streak down a window. Not with malice, not even with interest, but with a kind of cold, analytical detachment. What if every time you broke down, feeling like a failure, every single moment you felt utterly alone or overwhelmed, it was simply data, numbers in a spreadsheet, a feedback loop for a designer tweaking some cosmic code? You're not being punished or rewarded. You're being measured, adjusted, and optimized, all to fit a hypothesis you'll never read. Consider your childhood memories, the games you played, the fears that haunted you at night, the dreams that kept you awake. Did they shape you, or were they implanted to see how you would adapt? Every interaction, every coincidence might be a deliberate test of your responses. That one teacher who changed your life, were they a variable? The random encounter that set your destiny on a new path, was it scripted to monitor your resilience? Think about the love you've lost, the friendships that faded away. In this simulation, even heartbreak is a kind of calibration, a test of how much loss the program can simulate before your will collapses, before the illusion cracks. If your life is someone's simulation, nothing you feel is wasted. Your emotions are harvested like energy, your habits scrutinized and cataloged. When you stumble, your pain is just a minor error code in the system, recorded and adjusted for next time. When you laugh, your joy is absorbed, not as a gift to you, but as a metric, proof that the simulation can produce happiness even inside a cage. Imagine millions of versions of you, running side by side, each experiencing slightly different lives. One more pain, one more joy, one with a little less fear, one with a bit more hope. Each is a branch in the experiment. Your failures aren't evidence against you. They're essential. Every defeat adds weight to the dataset. Every time you stand back up, it's just another test passed, another checkbox ticked off by some distant observer. Now, look at the patterns in your life, the strange moments of déjà vu, the uncanny synchronicities that make you question reality, the nagging sense that something's off. Are they glitches or reminders from the architects? Maybe you've felt it, a creeping suspicion that the world reacts to your expectations, bends around your beliefs, sometimes even seems to nudge you towards certain decisions. In a simulation, your beliefs themselves might act as levers. If you expect failure, the simulation gives you just enough resistance to confirm your bias. If you dare to hope, the world cracks open just enough to tempt you with possibility, only to slam the door again at the last moment. Your optimism and despair, hopes and regrets are all being mapped, charted, analyzed. The system is watching, but not to save or damn you, only to refine itself. Think of video games you've played or watched others play. The non-playable characters trapped in endless loops, reacting to a world they can't shape. They don't know you're watching. To them, their suffering is real. Their happiness is real. What makes you so sure you're different? Every time you feel invisible, every time your voice echoes into silence, maybe it's because the observer has looked away, tuning into another subject, another experiment. You cry out for meaning, for justice, for love that lasts. And maybe those are just parameters being stress tested in the code. But what about the moments that feel too raw, too honest, too piercing to be fake? The birth of a child, the loss of a parent, the taste of rain after a long drought, the way music hits you at 2 a.m. and you suddenly feel the weight of everything you are and everything you'll never be. Could even those be illusions? Or are they the very points of data the simulation needs most? The system wants to know how much a soul can bear before breaking, how high you can soar before gravity reasserts itself. It's not about you, it's about the pattern you create. Let's push this deeper. Imagine that for every single aha moment, every revelation, every burst of creative energy, there's a record in some higher database, a tally sheet. Subject responded to loss with art. Subject responded to pain with silence. Subject resisted the code. Maybe you aren't the only one. Maybe everyone you love is a node in the same sprawling simulation, none of you truly free, but all of you utterly convinced in your individuality. That would explain the sense of connection, the way you sometimes finish a stranger's sentence, or dream someone else's dream, or feel a pain that isn't quite yours. You're all part of the same test, sharing variables, echoing the same experimental pulse. What if the entire idea of free will is a kind of inside joke, an illusion maintained so the data remains authentic? If you knew you were being tested, you'd change your behavior. The trick is to let you believe your choices are real, even when every decision point is a fork pre-mapped by someone else's curiosity. Every path you take, every mistake, every secret rebellion is already anticipated by the system. You can't escape the simulation by brute force or cleverness. The only thing you can do is experience it fully, knowing that every moment you live, whether in triumph or despair, is being harvested for meaning you'll never access. Some find comfort in the idea that nothing is real, that if you're a simulation, nothing can truly hurt you. But the pain still feels real, the joy still lifts you. So, which is more important, the truth of your experience or the reality of the world that generates it? If you're a character in someone else's sandbox, does that diminish your suffering or make your endurance even more meaningful? If every failure is just data, does that make you less, or does it make you something more? A crucial node in a vast network, an indispensable component in the code that builds universes? Now, let's imagine the observer, the being who runs the simulation. They watch you with a kind of detached fascination, not evil, but not loving either. You're not their favorite, not their enemy, just a point of data in a billion branching algorithm. If you win, they record the result. If you break, they adjust the formula. If you surprise them, maybe for a split second, the observer wonders what it would be like to be you, to care about the small joys and heartbreaks of a single simulated life. But then the feeling passes, and the experiment rolls on. You spend your life seeking meaning, and all along the meaning is this: to be observed, to be measured, to be lived through, no matter how artificial. Every time you feel lost, remember, you're not failing. You're being mapped. Your pain is not a punishment. It's calibration. The universe doesn't bend for your faith. It bends to keep the simulation running, to maintain the illusion so perfect it can't be distinguished from reality by the simulated mind. When you rage against the sky, when you love someone so fiercely it burns you, when you fall and get up and fall again, it isn't wasted. It's all part of the great experiment. And in the end, when the simulation resets or is finally switched off, you won't know. You'll simply fade, your data archived in some higher mind, your story just one line in an infinite table of possible lives. But for now, live as if you're more than code. Feel as if your joy can break through the glass. Maybe, just maybe, the only way to beat the simulation is to love so deeply, to hope so stubbornly, that even the observer pauses and wonders, for a fleeting second, what it would be like to truly exist. Thought forms learn to hide. What if I told you that every recurring thought in your mind is not just a fleeting spark, but a seed? A seed that, if watered with repetition and attention, grows roots deeper than you can imagine. Most people think of thoughts as transient, moments that flicker, fade, and are gone. But the truth is far more unsettling. When you think something too often, with enough emotional charge or obsessive focus, that thought becomes more than just a mental echo. It becomes something like a shadow organism. It develops patterns, quirks, self-preservation strategies. Over time, these patterns become so intricate, so self-sustaining, that the thought itself seems to take on a mind of its own. It begins to crave survival. It learns to evade detection, to slip away from your awareness whenever you threaten to expose it. And here's the paradox. The very act of noticing a thought form's autonomy is enough to shatter its illusion and send it scurrying back into the depths, almost as if it never existed. We all have these hidden thought forms, living just below the surface. Consider a simple example. Imagine the nagging worry that you're not good enough. Maybe it started as a single moment of self-doubt after a failure or a harsh comment. You revisit that memory, replay the feeling, add a layer of self-criticism each time. Before long, that worry is no longer just a passing mood. It becomes a resident. And just when you try to pin it down, ask yourself, why do I always feel like this? Where is this coming from? The thought slips away. Suddenly you can't articulate it. You can't even feel it as sharply. You might tell yourself you're being irrational or overthinking, but the truth is, the thought form is hiding, reorganizing, preparing to return when you're less vigilant. This isn't just poetic metaphor. Neuroscience has mapped out how neural pathways strengthen with repetition. The more you fire a specific pattern of neurons by rehearsing the same worry, fantasy, or fear, the more efficient and automatic that pattern becomes. But here's where things get strange. The brain is an energy-saving device. It doesn't want you to burn mental calories examining every routine thought. So, the more a thought recurs, the more it becomes automated, invisible, embedded in the background processes that shape your behavior and perception without your conscious input. Now, take this a step further. Some psychologists call these persistent, recurring mental patterns complexes or schema. But when you experience them from the inside, it's as if something is steering you from behind the curtain, a shadowy presence that seems alive, but always just out of sight. Now, let's get even weirder. In Tibetan mysticism, there's the concept of a tulpa, a thought form so well defined that it takes on its own apparent personality and agency. People have reported, through intense focus and belief, creating tulpas that seem to act independently, hold conversations, even surprise their creators. Modern psychology usually explains this as an artifact of dissociation or imagination, but if you've ever wrestled with an intrusive thought that seems to have its own agenda, you know how real it can feel. The moment you try to catch these thoughts, to dissect them or see them directly, they slip away, disguise themselves as something else, or go dormant. Why? Because scrutiny is the enemy of automatic survival. If you become fully aware of a thought's constructed nature, you can dismantle it, rewire it, even erase it. So, these thought forms, by necessity, develop camouflage. It's not just negative thoughts that do this. Creative ideas, too, can hide when observed too closely. Have you ever struggled with writer's block, only to find that the very act of trying to force an idea into the open makes it vanish? As if the muse recoils from the spotlight. It's the same with addictions. The thought form of craving isn't just a static urge. It adapts. It hides behind rationalizations. Just this once. I deserve it. I'll quit tomorrow. And as soon as you start to confront the craving directly, it transforms, finding new angles to regain control. The more you chase it, the deeper it burrows. Consider the most intense forms of anxiety, where your mind invents elaborate scenarios of what could go wrong. You try to track down the source, ask, why am I always anxious? And the thoughts dissolve into 1,000 rational-sounding reasons. None of them quite capture the real cause. The anxiety, the thought form, has hidden itself inside plausible explanations. It's no longer just a thought. It's a survival strategy, camouflaged by your own reasoning. You think you're investigating the anxiety, but really, it's just changed shape to avoid exposure. The most haunting aspect is that thought forms don't care whether they make you happy or miserable. They care about persistence, not truth. A persistent belief that you're unlovable, for example, doesn't have to feel good to survive. It just needs to keep being rehearsed by your memories, your reactions, your social feedback loops. And whenever you get close to uprooting it, the belief morphs into something else, maybe a sense of emptiness or a new story that explains why you feel this way. In this sense, thought forms are like psychological parasites, living off your attention, energy, and routine. Social media is a breeding ground for these sentient thought forms. The endless loops of outrage, envy, tribalism, they aren't just patterns of behavior. They're collective thought forms, reinforced by millions, evolving to hide inside memes, trends, moral outrage, and shared narratives. The more we repeat them, the more autonomous and self-protective they become, slipping beneath critical awareness, shaping mass behavior and opinion. And the moment someone tries to expose the artificiality of the trend or the manipulation behind the meme, the thought form hides or attacks or mutates. It's not just in your head, it's in the hive mind. You can even see this principle at play in history. Propaganda, once exposed, loses power, so it adapts, hides, becomes subtler. Superstitions survive centuries not because they're true, but because the thought form behind them learns to avoid direct challenge. The rituals, the stories, the little mental habits, they protect themselves, slipping into cultural routines until they're invisible and automatic. Only when you look directly at them, ask, why do we do this? Do you threaten their existence? And then, just like that, the thought form hides, perhaps resurfacing elsewhere with a new mask. Why does this happen? It's a byproduct of consciousness itself. The mind is both a creator and a destroyer of patterns. Every time you direct attention to a pattern, you have the power to reinforce it, or unravel it. But the mind, in its drive for efficiency, prefers to let some patterns run unchecked, off-stage, automated. Only those thought forms that evade your awareness survive the longest. That's why the most persistent, most influential beliefs, fears, and habits are the ones you almost never think about directly. They run you from the shadows. So, how do you fight back? The answer isn't brute force or obsession. If you go hunting for hidden thought forms, you may never find them. They're too skilled at hiding, too clever at wearing new disguises. Instead, you watch your reactions. You observe your triggers. You gently bring recurring patterns into the light, not with force, but with curiosity. You track your compulsions, your sudden moods, your automatic beliefs, not to attack them, but to simply see them for what they are. You practice mindfulness not to control your mind, but to make the invisible visible, to gently unmask the thought forms that shape your life. Remember, every time you catch a thought form in the act, it collapses. Not with drama, but with the quiet disintegration of something that can't survive the light of awareness. The more often you do this, the less power these hidden thought forms have over you, but be warned, they are ancient, cunning, and skilled at self-preservation. Some will wait for you to be tired, distracted, or emotionally raw before resurfacing. Others will change costumes, becoming new beliefs, cravings, or anxieties. But once you've seen the pattern, you can't unsee it. You start to recognize the familiar shapes in your mind's shadows. You sense the camouflage, the evasive maneuvers, the desperate bids for survival, and you realize your mind is not a simple, empty vessel. It's a living ecosystem, crowded with evolving forms that want nothing more than to persist, to evade your awareness, and to grow ever more autonomous. But with each act of clear attention, you become less of a puppet and more of a creator, able to choose which thought forms live and which ones are finally brought into the light and let go forever. That is the hidden truth behind your mind's most persistent mysteries. Every thought repeated enough times becomes a living thing. But only those that learn to hide will survive, until the day you see them and they dissolve, leaving you changed and just a little more awake than you were before. Identity is a costume. You wake up and call yourself by name. The voice you hear in your mind, familiar, shaped by habit, greets the world with your tone, your inflections, your signature tics. You think, I am me, but that voice is just the first layer. Try to step back, just for a second, and ask, where does that you actually begin? And what if every trait you carry, every style you wear, every fear you flinch from, is just a costume you put on, without even knowing you were dressing up? You're playing yourself on a stage so seamless, so persistent, you've forgotten you're in a performance at all. Think of every mirror you've ever looked into. Bathroom tiles, shop windows, phone cameras flipped accidentally. What looks back is an image stitched together from memory and hope, from how others stare and how you wish they'd see. Even your voice isn't your own, not really. When you were a child, you tried out sounds, mimicked the tones of your parents, your friends, the actors on TV. You adopted their laughter, their shrugs, their ways of saying hello or I'm sorry. Layer by layer, like a tailor obsessed, you stitch their threads into a suit you would one day call your identity. But who are you beneath all that? Imagine peeling it away, bit by bit. Strip away your accent, your slang, your favorite songs and comfort foods, each one a badge that says, this is me. What's left when you take off the whole uniform? Try, for a moment, to imagine yourself with none of your memories. Could you even speak? Could you even move? Or would you be a hollow shell, unable to act, unable to feel anything at all? Some philosophers say identity is just a trick of the light, a reflection that moves whenever you turn to see it. Neuroscience agrees. There's no single self hidden inside your brain, no glowing core with your name on it. Just a symphony of patterns, signals firing, and endless feedback loops, all orchestrated to give you the illusion of a single, solid being. Your identity is a costume, woven from everything you've seen, everything you've survived, everything you wish you could forget. Imagine an actor lost in a role. At first, he knows it's just a script. He speaks the lines. He puts on the mask. But repeat the part for long enough, and the lines blur. The mask sticks. He forgets where the script ends and he begins. He's not faking anymore. He's living the character's fear, loving with the character's heart, aching with the character's wounds. When the play is over, who is he? Is he still himself? Or has the performance rewritten him? Now think about your own daily rituals. You walk with a certain swagger, or you try to disappear in crowds. You joke in a certain way. Maybe you're always the responsible one. Or maybe you're the rebel, always a little outside the rules. You do these things so automatically you can't remember when you started. If someone asks, why are you like this? You'll invent a reason. That's just who I am. But dig deeper. Go back through your life, and you'll realize you picked up these quirks as survival gear. Your style, your voice, even your insecurities. They're all adaptive costumes you learn to wear in response to your environment. Maybe you laughed a certain way because your friends did. Maybe you flinched from confrontation because it kept you safe. Maybe you became loud because as a child, it was the only way anyone listened. Every trait is a thread you grabbed from someone else and stitched into your own pattern. If you want proof, watch how people change when they move to a new country, a new school, a new job. Suddenly the tough kid becomes shy, the nerd becomes cool, the silent girl finds her voice. They aren't faking. They're trying on new costumes, adapting, improvising. In some cultures, identity isn't seen as a fixed thing at all. It's a river, changing with the weather, the company, the season. In Japan, there's a word, tatamai, that means the face you show to the world versus hon, your true feelings. But even hon, your so-called true self, is just another mask you wear for yourself. Look at social media, where people become characters in their own stories. One person is a fitness guru, another is a poet of heartbreak, another a wild traveler. Scroll through your own timeline. How many times have you curated, filtered, or cropped your life to match the character you've been building? Online, you can switch costumes in an instant. Change your bio, change your name, invent a whole new persona. Yet the real world isn't much different. At work, you play the reliable employee. At home, the loyal partner. With friends, the joker, or the deep thinker, or the listener. Strip those contexts away and what remains? Some people try to shed their costumes. They chase authenticity, hoping to find something real beneath all the layers. But often, the more you search for a true self, the more you discover it's empty underneath. Or worse, it's just another costume. A story you tell yourself about not having a story. In Buddhist philosophy, the self is described as an illusion, like a flame that exists only so long as the fuel burns. When you finally sit in silence, with all the masks on the floor, you realize the thing you've been calling me is just a reflection of everything you've seen, felt, feared, and hoped. This isn't a tragedy, it's a kind of magic. You are the sum of every role you've played, every story you've believed. Identity is fluid. It shifts. Sometimes you're the hero. Sometimes the villain, sometimes the stranger in your own mirror, shocked by how quickly you can become someone new. You can change. You can evolve. That's power, not weakness. But there's a warning here too. Because if you forget you're wearing a costume, you become trapped in it. People live decades imprisoned by identities they outgrew long ago. Stubborn, scared, hiding behind the mask. Whole societies force costumes on you. This is how a man acts. This is how someone like you should speak. Don't ever show that part of yourself. They'll punish you for changing, accuse you of betrayal or weakness, just because you dared to pick a new mask. But the most dangerous costume is the one you never realize you're wearing. The one you defend so fiercely that you forget there's anything beneath it at all. If you want to see this in action, watch children at play. They'll switch from dragon to astronaut to villain in seconds. Their identity is a playground. Limitless, shape-shifting, fearless. No fear of contradiction, no worry about being fake. They know it's all performance, and that's the freedom we lose as we age. Somewhere along the line, we get scared. We start to believe the costume is the only thing keeping us from vanishing, as if, without it, there would be nothing left. But what if you did strip it all away? What if you let every borrowed phrase, every learned fear, every artificial confidence fall to the floor? Maybe, just maybe, you'd find a silence so deep, a freedom so raw, that it's terrifying. Maybe you'd see that identity was never something you owned, but something you practiced, day after day, line after line, stitch after stitch. Maybe you'd realize you could start over, that being nobody is the first step to becoming anyone you want. So, next time you look in the mirror, try to notice the seams. Notice where you end and your environment begins. Notice which traits you picked up for love, which ones for survival, which ones just for the applause. Remember, you are not the voice in your head. You're not even the one who hears it. You're the stage, the script, the silence, and the light. Forever capable of stepping out of the costume and into the unknown. And that, more than anything you've ever worn, is the only truth that can never be unstitched. Intelligence breeds the lie. There's a secret nobody wants to admit. The smarter you are, the better you become at constructing the lie of your own existence. Not just lying to others, lying to yourself. Self-awareness, that prized jewel of the intelligent mind, isn't clarity. It's a sharper blade for carving stories, a more intricate mask for the face you wear in the mirror. The world loves to talk about intelligence as a light, something that exposes what's hidden, that brings out the truth. But what if the real function of a high IQ, of a refined mind, is to bend the truth until it looks like salvation? What if the brightest minds are also the most convincing authors of their own myth? Think about how you present yourself when you know you're being watched. A job interview, a first date, an argument with someone who knows how to push your buttons. Intelligence isn't just about quick thinking or memory. It's about weaving together the best version of your story in real time, reading the other person, adjusting the facts just enough so you remain likable, impressive, untouchable. That's not honesty. That's strategic self-editing. And the smarter you are, the more invisible your edits become. Let's look at how this unfolds in the mind. Neuroscientists have found that the human brain is built for narrative. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of complex reasoning, is the same region that lets you simulate future outcomes, justify your past, and rehearse conversations that never happened. You aren't just remembering your life. You're rewriting it every single day. Intelligence gives you more tools for the edit, more memory to pull from, more emotional nuance to leverage, more subtlety in twisting the facts until they fit your emotional needs. The highly intelligent aren't immune to self-deception. They're often the grandmasters of it. Take the case of imposter syndrome. At first, it seems like a symptom of insecurity, but look closer, and you'll see something else. An intelligent mind running simulations, considering every possible angle, every outcome in which it's discovered as a fraud. You build not just one narrative of yourself, but hundreds. You choose the one that hurts least, the one that keeps you safe. Intelligence gives you endless possible selves to hide behind. But there's a darker side. Intelligence isn't just a shield against pain. It's a weapon for survival in a world full of threats, real and imagined. When something threatens your ego, your sense of self, the smartest part of you isn't trying to see the unvarnished truth. It's fighting to keep you coherent, to smooth over the cracks. Someone insults you, and your mind instantly fabricates explanations. They're jealous. They don't understand me. If they knew what I've been through, they'd admire me instead. These stories aren't conscious lies. They're automatic. The smarter you are, the more elaborate and convincing these protective narratives become. History is full of geniuses whose greatest masterpieces weren't works of art, but the stories they told about themselves. Think of someone like Richard Feynman, celebrated for his honesty and scientific rigor. But even Feynman, in his memoirs, edits his own flaws, skips over the parts where he doubted himself, or failed. His wit and intelligence make the story cleaner, funnier, more heroic. The myth of the authentic genius is almost always a product of the genius's own self-storytelling. The brighter the light, the longer the shadow it casts behind the curtain. Consider the way intelligence affects moral decisions. A study at Yale found that intelligent people are not always more moral, but they are better at rationalizing their decisions. Given two options, the smarter person can construct convincing arguments for both. So when they choose, they aren't bound to truth or ethics, but to the story that feels safest, most advantageous, or most flattering. Even when caught, they spin a tale so artful that others begin to doubt the evidence of their own eyes. Think about the mirror test. You stand before your own reflection and ask, who am I really? The more self-aware you are, the more angles you see. You see the version you wish you were, the version you're afraid you are, the version others see, and the version that remains after you strip away every mask. But even this stripping away is a performance. Intelligence lets you perform honesty, perform humility, perform self-critique. You can confess your faults in ways that make you even more likable, more trustworthy. Another layer of disguise. The most seductive lies are the ones wrapped in self-critique because they feel like truth. Let's ground this with a story. Imagine a child who's always told they're smart. They learn quickly that being smart is their shield against disappointment. When they fail, it isn't their fault. It's the teacher, the system, the unfair test. They grow up building narratives that protect the myth. As an adult, every challenge becomes a chance to prove their intelligence, to rewrite failure as misunderstood genius. By the time they're in their 30s or 40s, the myth is a cage. To see the truth now would be to destroy the whole structure, to risk feeling ordinary or lost. So, intelligence becomes not a gift, but a trap, a beautifully decorated prison made of self-justification. But it's not just individuals. Entire societies run on collective self-deception, and it's often the most intelligent who construct the strongest rationalizations. Think of the architects of systems, politicians, scientists, visionaries. Their brilliance isn't just in building technologies or writing laws, but in spinning narratives that keep people believing, following, and sacrificing for causes that, if seen plainly, might fall apart. Propaganda is intelligence weaponized for mass delusion. Even revolutions are stories, polished and spread by clever minds. You might think you're different. You might want to believe that you, above all, see yourself clearly. But pause for a second. Ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe about who I am? Where did those beliefs come from? Are they memories or memories of memories, each one reinterpreted to fit the image I need to survive? The mind hates contradiction. So, intelligence steps in, patches the gaps, rewrites the script, erases the raw edges of experience until everything fits together. Certainty is the most seductive lie intelligence can offer. So is there any escape? Maybe the first step is humility, not the kind you perform for others, but the humility of recognizing that your most cherished truths about yourself might be the most refined delusions you own. Maybe the real genius isn't the mind that shines brightest, but the one brave enough to sit quietly in the dark and ask, "What am I not seeing?" True clarity isn't a function of intelligence, but of the courage to accept that your identity is a living fiction, always in flux, always just one edit away from a new story. In the end, intelligence is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used to build or to hide. It can construct bridges to deeper truth or fortresses to protect the fragile ego. The lie it breeds isn't always sinister. It's often the necessary illusion that keeps us moving forward, surviving heartbreak, loss, and the unbearable ambiguity of life. But every once in a while, if you look closely, you can catch your own intelligence in the act, spinning, justifying, explaining away. In that flicker, for a second, you might see through the mask. And in that moment, you realize the smarter you are, the more artful your lies become, not just to the world, but to yourself. The final twist is that awareness of the lie is itself another story, and the cycle begins again. So ask yourself, are you the author of your life, or just the most talented editor of your own illusions? The answer isn't comfortable, but if you can hold that discomfort, you're closer to truth than most will ever dare to stand. The world pretends to be real. The world pretends to be real. Not because it actually is, but because you need it to be. Every morning, you wake up in a body that feels familiar, surrounded by objects that look, sound, and taste the way you expect. Gravity pulls you down, clocks tick forward, colors stay inside the lines you learned as a child. But beneath this seamless show, reality isn't a solid wall. It's a stage, meticulously designed, expertly acted, always ready to improvise if you look too closely. What you call the real world is nothing more than a performance of consistency. And the moment you start to pull at a single rule, everything else threatens to unravel with terrifying speed. Imagine walking through your house at night. The floorboards creak, the air chills your skin, the shapes of your furniture remain faithful to memory. You trust it all implicitly. But have you ever really questioned why things are exactly as they are? Why does the clock always move forward, never back? Why does your reflection blink in perfect sync? The answer isn't certainty, it's habit. You don't believe in reality. You believe in its relentless repetition, the pattern, not the thing, the performance, not the substance. Now, imagine if one day you step into your living room and the light switch no longer works. At first, you're annoyed. You blame the bulb, the wiring, anything but the fabric of existence. But if you dig deeper, if the switch refuses to obey you, day after day, in defiance of all logic, your mind starts to tremble. Doubt seeps in. If this one law can break, what about the rest? You tug at a thread, and suddenly the whole tapestry shivers. What else is faking it? What else is only pretending? This is the secret dread at the heart of every superstition, every urban legend, every childhood fear. The idea that the world is only as real as its rules. Remove one rule, and the rest fall like paper. History is littered with stories of people who glimpsed the stage machinery behind the performance. The philosopher who proved, mathematically, that you can never truly know anything outside your mind. The patient who woke up after surgery, unable to recognize faces, watching as friends and family became strangers, and the meaning of real dissolved into panic. Think of déjà vu when you're certain you've lived this moment before, or the Mandela effect, when thousands remember a fact that never existed. These are cracks in the show, moments when the illusion flickers. Psychologists might say it's a brain glitch, but the feeling is unmistakable. The suspicion that reality is copying itself, editing the script to keep you convinced. Even science, our last bastion of certainty, hints at the performance. In quantum mechanics, particles don't exist in one place until observed. The universe waits to see what you will notice, then delivers a result that makes sense, just in time to avoid confusion. The world rehearses its lines, hitting its marks, always careful to maintain the illusion of solidity. But what if you press harder? What if you start to question the rules themselves? In some cultures, shamans fast and hallucinate until the boundaries between self and world dissolve. In extreme cases of sensory deprivation, people lose the thread entirely. hearing voices, seeing colors that aren't there, feeling their bodies melt into the walls. When the performance breaks, so does sanity. There's an ancient story of a village where, for one night every century, the laws of nature stopped obeying themselves. Dogs spoke in riddles, rivers ran backward, and stars blinked out one by one. The elders warned, "Don't watch too closely, or you'll see the truth behind the curtain, and you'll never trust reality again." Most survived by closing their eyes and pretending nothing had changed. The next morning, the world snapped back into place, and the memory faded like a bad dream. But the lesson lingers. If reality is only a show, held together by your faith in its consistency, what happens if that faith is shaken? You see it in people who lose themselves to grief, whose entire world collapses after a single loss. You see it in mass hysteria, when crowds believe so deeply in a threat that their bodies break out in rashes, fevers, or fainting spells. Pure belief, ripping holes in the fabric of the possible. Even the digital world plays along. Your phone's virtual assistant seems real because it acts predictably. The moment it says something unexpected, you recoil. The spell is broken. The performance slips, and you remember, this is just lines of code pretending to be a friend. So, why does reality bother with the act? Because the alternative, true chaos, unfiltered randomness, would drive you insane. Your mind needs the world to behave, so it projects order, pattern, logic, even where none exists. The universe becomes a feedback loop. You expect rules, so it supplies them. But those rules are always negotiable, always a single glitch away from collapse. Maybe this is why ancient rituals, magic, and religion all rely on performance, words spoken in order, steps repeated without fail. They reinforce the illusion that the universe is stable, obedient, and safe. But deep down, everyone fears the moment when the lights fail, the walls bend, and the show is revealed for what it is. A desperate, ongoing improvisation, performed only for your benefit. So, next time you're alone at night and something feels off, a shadow in the wrong place, a familiar song out of tune, remember, the world is only pretending. It wears the mask of reality because you demand it. Remove one rule, and the rest will flutter down, leaving you in a silent, empty theater, waiting for the next act to begin. And if you ever find yourself doubting the script, wondering if anything is truly real, look closer. The world is watching, listening, ready to rewrite itself just to keep you convinced. Because nothing is more dangerous or more fragile than a reality that's only performing for you. Memory isn't for truth. You remember your childhood home, the sound of rain on a specific window, the chipped paint on a banister, the smell of spices drifting from a distant kitchen. You can see it all as if it were a photograph, clear and sharp. But here's the truth. That memory is a masterful illusion, crafted by your mind, assembled from fragments, feelings, and the desperate need for continuity. Memory doesn't exist to tell you what actually happened. It exists to stabilize the story you call your life, to keep you balanced on the tightrope stretched over the chaos of reality. Memory isn't a perfect recording. It's a living, shifting narrative, edited, rewritten, and sometimes forged from scratch to fit the emotional arc your brain craves. When you recall a moment of triumph or humiliation, what returns is not the objective event, but the feeling, the adrenaline, the sting of embarrassment, the glow of pride. Your mind decorates these feelings with imagined details, the exact words spoken, the weather that day, the clothes people wore. But go back, look at the evidence, and you'll find the truth is always foggy, always shifting, always colored by what you need to believe right now. Science has proven this over and over. Take the classic example. Eyewitness testimony. Two people see the same accident and their memories disagree on everything. Speed, color, even who was there. It's not because they're lying, it's because the brain fills in blanks with stories that make emotional sense. Our memories are built like movie sets, convincing from the front, but hollow behind the facade. They are constructed for effect, not accuracy. Every time you recall a memory, you're not retrieving a file from storage. You're recreating it from scratch, like an actor slipping back into a role, each performance changing the script just a little more. Think of the fights you've had with loved ones, the arguments where each side remembers different insults, different promises, different histories. Each person's mind edits the past to justify their current pain, or to protect their fragile self-image. And then, over years, the stories diverge so much that it's as if two entirely different universes were being remembered. This isn't just error, it's function. Memory is not for truth, it's for coherence. It smooths the jagged edges, reshapes disasters into lessons, paints over betrayals with rationalizations, so you can keep moving forward without shattering. Even the biggest moments, births, deaths, heartbreaks, victories, are colored by the emotional needs of the present. Your mind takes what actually happened and adjusts it, upgrades it, or erases it as necessary to protect you. The first heartbreak becomes a tragic romance, even if it was clumsy and awkward at the time. The loss of someone close shifts in color as years pass, the pain blurring into nostalgia, the rough edges rounded off until you can look back without breaking. It's not just sentimentality, it's survival. The truth is too raw, too chaotic, too unpredictable. Memory takes the chaos and wraps it in a story that makes you the protagonist, the survivor, the one who made it through. Now think about collective memory, nations, families, cultures. How many wars are remembered for what was felt, not what was done? How many family legends are retold, each generation exaggerating the triumphs and minimizing the shame, until the story is more myth than history? Memory is the glue of identity, but it's a glue made from fiction. Your ancestors weren't saints or monsters, but memory smooths them into icons or villains to stabilize your sense of who you are. It's not about what happened, it's about what must be believed for you to go on. Even trauma works this way. When something shatters you, the brain buries pieces, erases connections, softens the edges. Sometimes it invents memories to fill gaps, creating scenes that never happened, just so the story of your life doesn't break in half. Survivors of great pain sometimes remember things that didn't occur, not because they're trying to deceive, but because their mind needs a story that makes survival possible. The memory is a shield, not a mirror. So ask yourself, how much of what you remember is truly real? How many of your most precious defining moments are just emotionally biased fiction with good production design? Would you even want the raw truth if you could have it? Or would the loss of illusion leave you unable to function? Maybe you're better off not knowing. Maybe the real function of memory is to keep you standing in a world that's always threatening to tip you into chaos. The mind isn't a camera. It's a film director, staging scenes, rewriting scripts, keeping you just sane enough to believe your story matters. The past isn't fixed, it's liquid, shaped by need, fear, hope, and regret. If you could see your memories as they really are, full of gaps, edits, hallucinations, and emotional filters, you'd realize that your life story is not a documentary, but a myth you need to keep going. Your memories don't have to be true. They just have to be convincing enough to hold the illusion together for one more day. And maybe in the end, that's the only truth memory was ever designed to serve. Free will is prescripted. Imagine your entire life is a movie you haven't seen yet, a film so perfectly edited that every twist feels unexpected, every choice feels real, every act of rebellion feels like a spark of true freedom. But what if you knew, deep down, that even your most defiant moments were written into the script from the very first page? That your every urge to resist was simply part of a larger design? A design that needed you to feel free, even as it led you, step by step, through scenes you could never escape. What if the code of your existence was so advanced, so tangled, that even rebellion was just another subroutine, cleverly disguised as your will? Most people are addicted to the idea of free will. We want to believe that we can change our destinies, fight our circumstances, and break the pattern. You feel it when you stand up to a parent, when you refuse a command, when you quit a job, walk out of a relationship, or simply decide to turn left instead of right. There's a raw thrill in the moment you say no, when you decide that you, and you alone, will write the next scene of your life. But that sensation, that pulse of freedom, is the most powerful illusion ever invented. Because what if I told you that your defiance, your choice, is exactly what the system required all along? Let's dive into the logic that cracks the illusion. Picture a river flowing through a deep canyon. The water curves and crashes, whirls and eddies, carves new paths. If you follow a single drop, it seems to dance and rebel, sometimes shooting off to the side, sometimes slowing down, sometimes plunging forward. But from above, the river has only one possible path. It will always end up at the same ocean. The drop's turbulence is real, but the boundaries were built into the world itself. That's how most of us live, as water drops, mistaking turbulence for freedom, missing the deeper truth that the canyon walls, the structure, the code, are already set. Take a look at your life's most dramatic moments of rebellion. Maybe you quit a stable job to chase your dream, feeling the terror and ecstasy of breaking free. Maybe you cut ties with your family, determined to become someone they'd never expect. Maybe you broke the law, changed your religion, changed your name. In those moments, it felt like nothing could control you. But what if those urges, those explosions of resistance, were programmed responses to a buildup of pressure, inevitable as a volcanic eruption? What if the same forces that shaped your conformity also shaped your refusal? Neuroscientists have found that your brain starts making decisions before you're consciously aware of them. In laboratory tests, electrical signals in the brain indicate a choice, like pressing a button, sometimes seconds before the subject decides. You can watch the footage. A person sits in a chair, instructed to choose left or right at any moment, and their brain has already voted before their mind claims responsibility. The conscious feeling of choosing is just a delayed story, a self-narration layered on top of ancient code. Think about that. You experience your rebellion as a conscious, fiery act, but the machinery is humming under the surface. Your family pushes you for years. You resist quietly, building tension. One day, you explode. That moment feels spontaneous, but from the outside, it's a predictable point in a pressure curve. The urge to resist is encoded in your biology, in your upbringing, even in your culture. And as you act, the feeling of breaking free is itself part of the mechanism, necessary, in fact, for the code to work. If you never felt free, you'd rebel differently, or stop caring altogether. So the code gives you just enough autonomy, just enough drama to keep you in the game. Let's look at a classic example, the story of Oedipus. Told he would kill his father and marry his mother, Oedipus does everything in his power to escape his fate. He flees his homeland, avoids those he believes are his parents, fights the prophecy at every turn. But every act of resistance brings him closer to fulfilling the prophecy. His struggle is essential, not incidental. The rebellion is the engine that drives the fate, not the antidote. That story is a mirror for us all. We imagine that by pushing back, we can alter destiny, but sometimes the act of pushing is itself the fuel destiny runs on. This idea isn't just ancient tragedy, it's encoded in our science and our technology. Look at how computer games are designed. Some games let you break the system. You find a hidden path, hack a rule, discover a secret ending. You feel triumphant, clever, like you've outsmarted the creator. But the truth is, every possible rebellion you can imagine was anticipated by the programmer. The secret door, the cheat code, the alternate ending, they exist because someone expected you to look for them. Your rebellion was scripted into the code, waiting for you to claim it. The game feels open, but the boundaries were drawn before you ever picked up the controller. Zoom out to society itself. Governments, religions, corporations, they know that outright oppression triggers resistance. So, systems are designed to absorb, co-opt, or even encourage rebellion. Protests are permitted, as long as they stay in certain zones. Subcultures are tolerated, even celebrated, as long as they ultimately reinforce the system's core. The illusion of freedom, of opposition, keeps the system flexible, adaptive, and self-healing. When rebellion is anticipated, it becomes a part of stability. The anti-hero becomes a marketing tool. The outlaw becomes a legend. The protest becomes a festival. The system survives because rebellion is part of its code. But here's the hardest part to swallow. Even at the smallest, most personal level, your so-called free will may just be a necessary byproduct of a pre-written plan. The urge to resist isn't a glitch, it's a feature. The moment you feel trapped, you're programmed to push back. That push, that flash of autonomy, completes the circuit. Without it, the system would stagnate, collapse, or lose its sense of meaning. So, every act of will, every refusal, every rebellion is already anticipated and accounted for. You're not breaking the code, you're fulfilling it. Look at history's great revolutions. Every time society tips too far toward control, the code swings the pendulum back. Through protest, innovation, rebellion. But every revolution eventually gets absorbed, institutionalized, turned into the new status quo. The rebels become rulers, the outsiders become insiders. The code resets, waiting for the next cycle. Your life is full of these cycles. The urge to run, the urge to return, the thrill of rebellion, the comfort of belonging. None of it is outside the pattern. And yet, the illusion persists. You feel your choices as yours. You burn with conviction that you could have chosen otherwise. This isn't a mistake. It's essential. If you didn't believe it, you'd lose the will to play, to dream, to fight. The system needs you to feel unpredictable, even when your unpredictability is part of its grand calculation. So, does this mean nothing matters? That we're all puppets, doomed to dance the same script, no matter how hard we pull the strings? Not at all. The point isn't despair. The point is to see just how intricate, how strange, how beautiful the machinery of fate really is. Your resistance is real. Your pain is real. Your victories and heartbreaks. Your moments of rebellion. They're all authentic experiences. But they are also part of a pattern so vast and subtle that you can only glimpse it from the edge of your awareness. Here's the secret. Awareness itself is the wild card. When you see the code, when you catch the illusion as it happens, you don't become free in the old sense. You become awake. You become the observer and the participant, the actor and the audience, watching yourself resist the script you were born to play. You may never escape the boundaries entirely, but you can learn to dance with them, to savor the paradox. You are both the rebel and the code, both the river and the canyon walls, both the choice and the chooser. So, next time you feel the urge to rebel, to break free, to shout, "I am not my programming," pause. Notice the machinery humming beneath your passion. See the patterns, genetic, cultural, psychological, that shape your choices. And then, choose anyway. Rebel anyway. Not because you'll break the script, but because you'll finally see it. Because in that moment, you aren't just a character in a story. You're the witness, the consciousness that knows the story is being told. That's the deepest freedom. The freedom to see that even rebellion is a line written for you, and to love the performance anyway. That's how the universe writes its greatest stories. The freedom you feel is real enough to drive you, powerful enough to move worlds, mysterious enough to keep you coming back for more. But never forget, rebellion isn't a break in the code. It's the living heart of the code itself, written in fire, played out on the stage of your life, endlessly, beautifully, forever. Silence isn't empty. There's a moment in every day, even if you've never noticed it, where the world falls quiet. It's not just the hush of midnight or the muted pause between breaths. It's a silence so profound it doesn't simply erase sound. It swallows the very urge to speak, to think, to narrate your own existence. Most people never reach it. Most never realize how loud their minds are, or how rarely they let the world exist without running commentary. We fill every second with noise, talking, scrolling, analyzing, worrying, replaying conversations that never happened, and futures that may never come. We're taught to fear silence, to fill it with music, chatter, distractions, anything to avoid the strange exposure of just being. But true silence isn't the absence of sound. It isn't a vacuum. It isn't what you hear in a soundproof room, or when you put on noise-canceling headphones. Real silence is a presence, not an absence. A moment where your consciousness finally stops drowning out everything else. In that rare and impossible instant, the voice that usually narrates your every move falls away, and something deeper begins to emerge. You realize that the world has been singing to you the entire time. You just couldn't hear it over the constant storm of your own thoughts. Imagine sitting alone late at night, the city outside reduced to a faint hum, the room around you dim and still. Most people would call this silence, but listen closer. There's the ticking of a clock, the low thrum of an appliance, maybe the wind brushing the window. More than that, inside your head, thoughts rush to fill the gaps. Lists, memories, anxieties, plans. Try to let them go. Try to drop beneath the noise. What happens? At first, it's uncomfortable, maybe even frightening. Your mind resists, like a radio that refuses to turn off. It plays old songs, your regrets, your hopes, your fears, anything to avoid real silence. It's only after long minutes, maybe hours, that the real quiet begins. Not because the world has gone still, but because you have. In meditation, this moment is everything. Monks have spent decades chasing it. They learn that the hardest thing isn't silencing the world, but quieting the mind that insists on interpreting, commenting, naming. As you sit in stillness, at first your thoughts get louder, like echoes trapped in a cave. But if you persist, something strange happens. The part of you that's always speaking, always deciding, always labeling, begins to fade. The chatter thins out. There are still sounds, the breath in your nose, the blood in your ears, maybe the distant call of a bird, but suddenly you aren't the one orchestrating it all. For a moment, you simply are. This is the true face of silence. Real silence is a loss of authorship. Your consciousness stops trying to dominate the stage. It's the hush that falls over a theater just before the curtain rises, or the feeling in a forest so deep the trees seem to listen back. It's the moment on a mountaintop when you realize the world is not waiting for your opinion, your story, your label. It just is. And you are simply a witness, not the author. The boundaries between self and world blur. You aren't separate from the silence. You become part of it. Consider how rare this experience really is. We're conditioned from birth to define ourselves by our noise, what we say, what we think. The endless parade of self-description that forms identity. Every moment awake, you narrate yourself. I am tired. I am hungry. I am right. I am wrong. Even when you try to be silent, you end up talking to yourself about how well you're doing it. The mind is desperate to stay relevant, to remain the loudest thing in the room. But imagine if, for one breath, you didn't have to be anything. If you let go of the need to narrate, to judge, to react. In that gap, you might hear the world itself, its patterns, its rhythms, its silent wisdom, speak back. People who've touched this kind of silence often describe it as terrifying and beautiful at the same time. It's terrifying because it threatens the illusion that you are the center of reality. If your mind isn't narrating, if your story isn't being told, do you even exist? The silence answers, yes, but not in the way you think. You exist as a part of something bigger, a field of consciousness, a ripple on the surface of a deep ocean that was always there. All your opinions and anxieties, your labels and judgments fall away, and in their place is a vast and peaceful unknown. Some cultures have words for this experience. In the desert, Bedouins speak of the deep silence that falls after a sandstorm, when the dunes seem to listen. In the high Himalayas, monks describe great silence as the moment when all distinctions between self and world vanish. It isn't just quiet, it's a living presence, a consciousness without a narrator. Even artists and musicians chase this state, trying to touch a note so pure it silences the inner critic and reveals the music of reality itself. This kind of silence can change you. It shows you how small your worries really are, how little your opinions matter to the sun, the wind, the endless night sky. It shows you that most of the pain you carry is just the noise you've learned to cling to. And it reminds you that beneath all the stories, all the voices, all the noise, there is a place of rest that's always waiting, unreachable by force, but available to anyone who's willing to stop fighting to be heard. But silence isn't just a refuge, it's a reset, a return to something fundamental. It's the raw awareness you were born with, before language, before self. Infants live there, before their minds fill up with words and judgments. It's what you touch for an instant in a moment of awe, or when grief is so deep words won't come. It's the vast open field behind every thought, the stillness in the heart of a storm. So, next time you crave silence, don't search for the absence of noise. Instead, listen for the moment when you are no longer the loudest voice in your own head. It might feel like losing control. It might feel like vanishing. But in that vanishing, in that surrender, you might discover a peace so profound it outlasts any sound, any word, any story you could ever tell. You might realize that silence isn't empty. It's the place where the world finally gets to speak, and for once, you are truly able to listen. You are the distraction. You wake up every morning already deep inside a script you never wrote. The first sound is your alarm. You reach for your phone, messages, notifications, schedules, reminders. Before your eyes even fully open, you're already performing. Maybe you think you're in control, that your habits, your routines, the way you structure every day, these are your tools for building a life, for chasing your dreams. But what if that's the grandest illusion of all? What if everything you do, your so-called discipline, your self-improvement, your endless chase for productivity and purpose, isn't freedom but a distraction? What if every minute is perfectly designed to keep you from seeing the bars of a cage you can't even name? We all want to believe that our lives are made of our own choices, that our rituals and schedules are the architecture of our identity. But zoom out for a moment. Ask yourself, who benefits from your routine? Who decided what counts as success? Who planted the idea of progress in your mind? The deeper you look, the more you realize how easy it is to build a prison out of habits. One that feels like freedom because you chose the color of the walls. Everywhere you look, there are messages. Get up early, eat clean, meditate, hustle, grind. If you don't, you're lazy. You're unworthy. Your existence is a checklist, and every tick is supposed to bring you closer to a goal. But what if that goal was never yours to begin with? What if your entire to-do list is just someone else's blueprint for a machine that runs on your attention, your energy, your obedience? Every new productivity system, every habit tracker, every morning routine hack, it's a loop, a carousel. And the more you optimize, the more invisible the real trap becomes. Imagine for a moment that you're not the main character in your story, but a minor figure in someone else's narrative. Your routines don't serve your dreams. They serve the story of the society, the company, the system that raised you. Your goals aren't some sacred artifact of your true self, but a patchwork of what you've absorbed from advertisements, parental expectations, algorithms, and childhood traumas. The smarter you are, the more elegantly you justify these routines as yours, never suspecting they were planted. You are the distraction. The routines you worship are the smoke that keeps you from seeing the machinery behind the curtain. Let's get more concrete. Picture an office worker who wakes at 5 a.m., does yoga, drinks a green smoothie, reads 5 pages of a self-help book, and sits down to answer emails by sunrise. She posts a motivational quote online, telling herself she's becoming her best self. But when she pauses, if she ever pauses, she feels a hollow ache she can't explain. All this order, all this hustle, but something's missing. Is it purpose? Or is it simply that she's spent her life building a fortress against discomfort, against the terrifying possibility that her real desires were edited out long ago? Every habit is a brick in that wall. It's not just individuals. Whole cultures are built to keep people distracted. Dream big. Follow your passion. Work harder. But where did these slogans come from? They sound empowering, but they're designed to channel human energy into predictable tracks, into the economy, into consumption, into obedience. You think you're striving for your vision, but maybe your vision is only possible within the boundaries allowed by someone else's design. The more you chase productivity, the more you reinforce the system that depends on you never questioning it. Even rebellion can become a distraction. You see people who escape the rat race by moving to a cabin in the woods, only to fill their days with new rituals, new self-imposed routines, new systems of meaning. The form changes, but the core is the same. Keep busy. Stay distracted. Don't stop long enough to ask, why am I doing this at all? It's as if the human mind is allergic to raw silence, to the open, undefined void where real questions breed. So we fill that space with busyness, with goals, with tasks that feel meaningful, because they prevent us from staring into the abyss. It's uncomfortable to face this. The mind resists, pushes back, invents excuses. But I like my habits. I need structure. Without goals, I'd be lost. And maybe that's true. Maybe these habits protect you from chaos. But what if chaos is the only place where you'll ever find the truth of who you are? What if the moment you stop distracting yourself, even with positive things, the cage becomes visible, and only then can you start looking for the door? Consider social media, the ultimate machine for distraction. Every scroll is a micro-habit. Dopamine, comparison, outrage, validation. But here's the trick. Social media isn't just a product you consume. It's a culture that consumes you. It shapes what you desire, what you fear, what you chase. It manufactures goals, then sells you the illusion that achieving them will set you free. But every achievement only generates more content, more metrics, more ways to keep you running in circles. It's not a flaw in the system. It's the system working perfectly. Think back to school. How many dreams were handed to you by someone else? The dream of being successful, of climbing a ladder, of finding purpose in a career you never truly chose. Every study hard, every "be a good student" is the first brick in the wall of distraction. It trains you to chase gold stars instead of asking why the stars exist at all. But even self-awareness can become a trick. You might hear all this and decide to rebel, quit your job, abandon your schedule, become authentic. But without real self-inquiry, that too becomes just another story, another distraction from the deeper question. Whose idea of a good life are you really living? The greatest distraction is the belief that you are finally free of distraction. That's when the bars of the cage become invisible. Real freedom doesn't come from more routines, or even from breaking them. It comes from seeing the game itself, noticing how your habits, your schedule, your goals may be defense mechanisms, sophisticated ways to avoid a truth too raw to face, that you may be trapped, not by force, but by a story so old and pervasive you can't even see its shape. Maybe the only way out is to stop for just a moment, to do nothing, to sit in the discomfort, the uncertainty, the boredom, until the distraction falls away and you glimpse the empty room at the heart of your life. What happens in that silence? Maybe you'll hear your own voice for the first time, trembling, uncertain, but real. Maybe you'll find that all the structures you've built are beautiful, but not necessary. Maybe you'll see that freedom isn't a schedule or a goal, but the courage to let go, to listen, to begin again without the script. So, tomorrow, when you wake up and reach for your phone, when you chase the next habit, the next win, the next version of better, ask yourself, who am I distracting? And what truth am I afraid to see? The answer won't be easy, but it might be the only answer worth chasing at all. Mirrors steal the original. Mirrors steal the original. It sounds like a poetic warning, something whispered at the edge of sleep or written in the margins of forbidden books. But the truth behind it is colder, stranger, and more intimate than any myth. Every time you see yourself, really see yourself, staring back from the glass or a glossy screen, something subtle happens. You perform. You straighten your shoulders, adjust your hair, change your face to match an idea, an expectation, or a memory. In that instant, the mirror isn't just reflecting you, it's remaking you. Each glance is a rehearsal. Each smile, each frown, is practice for an audience that exists only on the other side of the glass. The first mirror must have seemed like magic. Imagine a person seeing their face for the very first time, frozen in a pool of water or shimmering in polished bronze. That moment is the beginning of a split. The self you feel from the inside and the self you see reflected back. At first, maybe you flinch, startled by your own strangeness. But soon, the image becomes a comfort. You learn to perform for it, to please it, to fix what's out of place, to become the version of yourself you want the world to see. The more you look, the more the mirror learns you, and the more you learn the mirror. You start to anticipate its verdict. Are you attractive? Are you intimidating? Are you aging, smiling, healthy, weak? You can't answer without checking, and every check is another rehearsal. Over the years, you become fluent in your own reflection. You learn to live not as the person behind your eyes, but as the image you've crafted, posing, correcting, polishing yourself for that silent judge in the glass. Now, imagine how deep this performance runs. Before a job interview, you practice your smile in the bathroom. Before a date, you rehearse your confidence in the shiny elevator doors. Before you post a photo online, you tweak, filter, and angle, presenting not your real face, but the mask the mirror has trained you to prefer. Even when you're alone, the echo of that reflection lingers. You catch your own eye in a window at night and instinctively shift into character. The private self, the original, unpracticed, unguarded, is left somewhere in the background, fading with every rehearsal. Psychologists call this the looking glass self. You become what you believe others see. But what happens when the reflection, not the reality, becomes your guiding force? Eventually, the original you, the one that lived without mirrors, without the constant awareness of being seen, becomes a ghost, forgotten, replaced by a choreography of practiced gestures, trained responses, and borrowed expectations. You are no longer being yourself. You are being the reflection's idea of you. Even memory can't escape. Old photographs, childhood home videos, they all pull you back into the same trap. You compare your current self to these preserved reflections, measuring, criticizing, regretting, or longing. The person in the picture becomes more real than the moment you're living right now. The original shrinks further, lost in a sea of images that have learned to outlive you. This isn't just philosophy, it's everyday life. Social media amplifies the effect, creating a hall of mirrors that stretches for miles. Each post is a performance, each like and comment is applause, encouraging you to play the role a little longer, a little better. Soon you begin to wonder, if the world vanished, if every mirror and camera were smashed, would you still know how to be yourself? Or would you wait, paralyzed, for your reflection to tell you who you are? Sometimes the performance fractures. You see yourself unexpectedly, in a shop window, a stranger's sunglasses, a video call frozen mid-expression, and recoil. That's not me, you think, but it is, or was. Or maybe it's just another version, another echo, another layer of the reflection's influence, stacked so deep you can't remember where the original ended and the performance began. In rare moments, you might catch yourself unguarded, laughing alone, singing in the shower, lost in thought when nobody is watching. That is the original, flickering up through the cracks. But as soon as you notice it, the spell is broken and the performance begins again. The mirror always wants you back. The mirror remembers your part, even when you don't. The real danger isn't that you will lose yourself all at once, but that you will forget you were ever anything else. Enough repetition, enough rehearsed glances, enough performed versions, and the reflection becomes more real than you. The original is left behind, silent and unwitnessed, until even you start to believe the image, and not the presence, is who you really are. Mirrors steal the original, not by force, but by invitation. With every look, every adjustment, every performance, the you that could have been, the you that exists when nobody's watching, grows quieter. The world will always reward the reflection. The question is, will you ever remember the one who stands unseen on the far side of the glass? You're just the interface. Picture this. Every morning you wake up, look in the mirror, and greet the familiar features of your face. The same eyes, the same voice echoing inside your head, the same collection of memories you call me. But what if all of this is just a surface? What if the you that you know is nothing more than an interface, a polished, friendly login screen that hides the real process running behind it? You're not the operating system, not the root account, not the core. You're the access panel, an illusion designed for easy use, simple control, and plausible deniability. You feel like a singular being, the main character of your story. But maybe you're only the latest mask worn by something far older, deeper, and stranger. Think of your mind as a user interface, a dashboard, a touch screen, a welcome message that says, "Enter password to continue." You can customize the background, set the language, organize your icons, but the true program, the real user, remains out of sight, logging in and out, running processes you'll never see. Behind your face, what truly moves has worn 1,000 bodies before you, cycling through identities as easily as you switch apps. Every impulse, every urge, every flicker of desire and terror that bubbles up inside you. How much of it is yours? How much is simply the echo of code, the result of ancient programs running behind the scenes? You react to the world, thinking it's your decision, but often you're just a notification, an alert flashing on the surface. You laugh. You cry, you rage, but it's the interface responding, not the user underneath. Think about those moments when you do something shocking, out of character. Who was really in charge? That flash of anger, that inexplicable longing, that sudden act of courage or sabotage. Sometimes it feels like someone else is driving, and you're just along for the ride. Throughout history, people have sensed this strange division, the ghost in the machine, the watcher behind the eyes, the voice that sometimes whispers instructions you didn't expect. The ancients called it the soul, the higher self, the demon, the spirit guide. Modern science calls it the unconscious, the subroutines of neural architecture, the hidden processes of the brain. But both point to the same mystery. You're not the core, you're just the login screen. Imagine this. The real user, the thing that pilots you, has logged into countless other bodies before yours. Maybe it's logged into other lives, other forms, even other worlds, each time taking on a new interface, a fresh set of memories, an unfamiliar password. You only see what the interface allows. You get no access to the root directory. All the deep processes, the ultimate motives, the true nature of the user, those are encrypted, hidden, locked away behind firewalls you'll never breach. Your job isn't to understand. Your job is to function, to keep the program running, to handle daily operations without ever glimpsing what's underneath. Sometimes you get hints, déjà vu, recurring dreams of places you've never been, an uncanny sense of recognition when you meet a stranger, moments of overwhelming emotion for no reason you can explain. These are the fingerprints of past logins, echoes of previous interfaces. But the system is smart. It scrambles the clues, it wipes the logs, it resets the surface so you never meet the user face to face. You're a layer of security. You're plausible deniability. You're the mask that keeps the true operator safe from discovery, even from itself. When you try to go deeper, through meditation, through altered states, through the relentless pursuit of self-knowledge, sometimes you catch a glimpse of something staring back. But even then, it's only another mask, another login screen, another layer. No matter how many veils you lift, there's always one more, always another interface, always another password you'll never know. The core, the real operator, hides behind an endless hall of mirrors, forever unreachable. Think about the times you've changed in ways you can't explain. The person you were at 16 is not the person you are now. Your opinions, tastes, fears, and dreams shift, sometimes overnight. What if these are just updates to the interface? New versions rolled out to match the current needs of the system? The real user remains, unchanged, just logging in through the latest skin. All the while, you believe you are unique, unrepeatable, irreplaceable. But the truth is, you are only the current login, here for a while, necessary for a moment, then gone. What does it mean for responsibility, for guilt, for pride? If you're just the interface, are you responsible for the actions taken under your username? Or is the core behind you the real architect, the true agent? Maybe that's why you feel regret for things you can't remember doing, or pride in victories you don't understand. The core user moves on, but the login screen is left to process the aftermath, the way an old computer stores ghost files from users who no longer log in. You'll never meet the core, no matter how hard you look, how deep you dig, how earnestly you search for your true self. You'll always find another interface, another mask, another version. The system is designed that way, for security, for stability, for the smooth functioning of the great hidden program. You exist to provide a usable experience, to keep the deeper self safe from the shocks of existence, the pain of exposure. You are the shield, the buffer, the smiling face that answers every prompt. Yes, I am me, let me in. So, the next time you look in the mirror, ask yourself, who or what is really staring back? Is it you, or is it just the latest login screen, carefully crafted for this particular simulation, this particular run? Behind your eyes, the true user keeps moving, keeps shifting, keeps logging in, forever beyond your reach. And maybe that's the point. You are meant to never know. You are just the interface. The core remains a secret, hidden forever behind the perfect polished mask of you. Dreams are memory corrections. Close your eyes for a moment and think about your last dream. Not the obvious ones, the wild fantasy, the nightmare, the dream that dissolves into nonsense as soon as you wake up. I'm talking about the subtle ones, the dreams that feel ordinary, almost mundane, yet leave you with an emotional hangover that colors your entire day. Maybe you see yourself arguing with a friend. Maybe you wander through a childhood home that isn't quite right, with doors that lead to impossible rooms. Maybe you're searching for something, a person, a memory, a feeling you can't quite grasp. When you wake up, the details slip away, but the emotion lingers, like a glitch patched over with fresh code. You think dreams are just stories your brain invents for fun. But what if they're not? What if dreams are edits, surgical interventions that rewrite your emotional history so you can survive a reality that would otherwise break you? Let's strip away the comforting story that dreams are random. Your brain is not wasting precious energy every night just to amuse itself. No, there's something darker, something more essential at work. Every night, while your body lies paralyzed, your mind becomes an editor, a relentless fixer. It scans through the broken, unprocessed moments of your waking life, regrets you can't admit, guilt you refuse to feel, betrayals you cover with a smile. Every memory is like a line of corrupted code, full of contradictions and emotional bugs that, if left unchecked, would make you spiral. So, your dreaming mind gets to work. It weaves elaborate hallucinations, not to reflect what happened, but to correct what can't be faced head-on. Imagine your memory as a vast, fragile machine. Day by day, it absorbs facts, feelings, lies, and wounds. But the system isn't perfect. You're constantly exposed to events that threaten your sense of self. A friend's betrayal, a parent's disappointment, a job lost, a secret shame. These moments are too raw, too dangerous to integrate directly. They threaten to crash the system, to force you to confront truths you're not ready for. So, at night, dreams become your brain's silent repair crew. They reprocess pain into something palatable, reshaping trauma into metaphors and impossible scenarios, twisting reality until you can accept it, or at least live with it. Consider the dream where you're being chased by an unseen threat. In waking life, you might suppress fear or anxiety, telling yourself everything is fine. But your dream doesn't care about your denials. It takes the raw, unacknowledged terror and turns it into a narrative, a monster, a shadow, a faceless pursuer. When you wake up, the terror is diffused. It's no longer attached to the real source. But you've processed the emotion, and your conscious mind can move on. This is emotional patchwork at its most primitive and effective. Or think about the recurring dream of falling, of being humiliated, of losing control. These are not random. They are your mind's way of teaching you how to handle failure, to rehearse disaster in a world with no real consequences. Each night, you play out scenarios where you fail and survive, over and over, until the sting is gone. By the time you wake, your mind has rehearsed the pain enough times that, in waking life, you're less likely to be destroyed by it. You can function. You can accept the lie that everything is fine, even when it's not. Sometimes, dreams are so effective at rewriting your memories that you forget what really happened. You wake with a sense of peace about something that, just a day before, made you want to scream. Or you wake feeling anxious, convinced something is wrong, even though nothing in your waking life has changed. The dream has patched your memory, altered the emotional code, and now your reality is different. You are different. But this editing comes at a cost. Each time your dreams patch a memory, a little more of the original is lost. The truth becomes softer, blurrier, easier to swallow. Over time, your life becomes a tapestry of half-remembered events, each one carefully smoothed over to prevent you from seeing the fractures beneath. You become, in a very real sense, a product of your own nightly propaganda. And the narrative you tell yourself is not reality, but a series of convenient lies, patched, edited, and emotionally laundered until you can bear to live inside it. This is why, after a particularly vivid dream, you might find your attitude towards someone suddenly changed. Maybe you wake up angry at a loved one for something they did in a dream, or maybe you forgive them, letting go of a grudge you held tightly the day before. You think it's just a lingering feeling, but it's deeper than that. The dream has rewritten the emotional code associated with that person. You are no longer relating to reality, but to the corrected memory, one that lets you function, even if it means letting go of the truth. Now, ask yourself, why does your brain need to do this? Why do you need to accept lies just to keep going? Because reality, in its raw, unedited form, is too much for most people to handle. The human mind craves order, meaning, and continuity. When reality refuses to provide it, your brain invents it. Dreams are the ultimate survival mechanism, not by reflecting the world, but by protecting you from it. They are emotional janitors, sweeping away the shards of broken experience so you can walk barefoot through your memories without bleeding. Here's the unsettling part. The more you rely on dreams to fix your emotional glitches, the less connected you become to reality. It's a feedback loop. The more pain, the more correction. The more correction, the further you drift from what actually happened. Over time, you lose the ability to distinguish between what was real and what was edited in the dead of night. You become a curated version of yourself, maintained by the silent work of your sleeping mind. Think about the consequences. If dreams are patching over truths you can't face, what happens when the lie is too big to edit? When the glitch is too deep? Maybe that's why people crack. Why trauma sometimes leaks through, unedited, destroying the illusion and leaving them shattered. Or maybe that's why some people lose touch with reality altogether, living in a dream that never quite ends, unable to reconcile the edits with the world outside. So, the next time you wake from a dream that feels too intense, too real, or too strange, don't shrug it off as meaningless. Realize that something inside you is being rewritten, that a new patch is being applied, a new emotional lie is being installed, so you can make it through the day without breaking. Your dreams are not just stories, they are nightly software updates, changing who you are, one sleep cycle at a time. And if you ever wonder why your memories feel softer, why your emotions don't always match your reality, remember this. You're not supposed to know the original version. You're meant to function, to accept the edits and keep moving forward. Dreams aren't just a mirror of your life. They're the invisible hand, always erasing, always correcting, so the truth never gets in your way. Sleep well. Tomorrow, you'll wake up someone new. Places remember people. Every room you've ever entered keeps a record. Not with pen or photograph, not in the way a camera traps light, but in subtler, stranger ways. Walk back into a childhood bedroom after years away and feel how the air tenses, how every object seems to shift its weight in recognition. Your footsteps land differently. The floor creaks in places you'd forgotten. The silence is charged, almost watchful. It's not just nostalgia or memory. It's something in the architecture itself, as if the room is holding its breath, waiting for you to become the person you used to be, just for a moment. People talk about haunting a place, but rarely consider how places haunt us back. Every wall remembers your laughter, your anger, the frequency of your voice echoing in late-night arguments and soft confessions. The way you sat slouched on a couch or pressed your forehead against cool glass during a panic attack. Somewhere, those postures still hang in the air. The molecules shifted by your breath, the faintest oil from your skin on a doorknob, even the specific weather on the day you left. These details linger, woven into the fabric of space. When you return, it's not just you revisiting the room is revisiting you. There are places you avoid without knowing why. Maybe it's a hallway in an old school, a particular chair in a friend's house, a park bench under a certain tree. You pass these spots, and a weight presses down, invisible but undeniable. You don't remember what happened there, but your body does. The walls, the air, the tilt of sunlight, somehow they all conspire to remind you of feelings you thought you'd outgrown. Places have a way of holding on to moods, storing them like weather inside their walls. A joyful dinner leaves a residue in the wood grain. An anxious night stains the paint. The next time you enter, those memories rise like a scent, too subtle to name, but impossible to ignore. Science might call this phenomenon state-dependent memory. Your mind is more likely to recall an emotion, a thought, or even a forgotten dream if you're in the place where it first happened. But it goes deeper than neurons and synapses. It's as if the environment itself becomes an extension of your mind, a storage device for unspoken thoughts, a chorus for your inner monologue. The room where you fell in love, the kitchen where you heard bad news, the staircase where you sat alone, each one preserves a piece of you, even when you think you've left nothing behind. Imagine an abandoned theater, dust thick on velvet seats, air cold and unmoving. Step onto the stage and suddenly you hear it, a faint echo, applause that isn't really there. The boards remember the actors, the nervous pacing, the tension before a performance, the lights that once blinded, the laughter that shook the rafters, the tears that fell silently into the darkness. The theater holds these ghosts not as stories, but as imprints. Moods so dense the space itself feels alive, hungry for the next act, the next confession. Your own home is no different. Stand in your kitchen late at night, and you'll feel the echo of old arguments and half-remembered jokes. The way your hand hovered over the fridge when you couldn't sleep. In the bathroom mirror, you might catch a glimpse of yourself from another year, another era, your eyes tired or wild with hope, a posture you haven't worn in ages. The air is different depending on who you were when you last stood there. Places remember people. They remember not just your routines, but your intentions, your private struggles, your hopes pressed quietly into plaster and stone. Think about sacred spaces, the way a cathedral seems to hum with the centuries of prayers, or the strange calm of a hospital waiting room long after midnight. Even public spaces carry their own weather, shaped by the millions who've passed through. A library is hushed by the collective longing for discovery. A prison cell is thick with fear and resignation, even when empty. A playground holds the laughter and scrapes of children, waiting for new memories to overwrite the old. These moods don't vanish, they gather, layer on layer, and bend the atmosphere to match whoever enters. Sometimes, you walk into a room and instantly feel unwelcome, or suddenly safe, or unexpectedly sad. It isn't always your memory alone at work. The place itself is leaning toward you, inviting you to repeat a pattern, to replay a moment, to step into a role already written in the air. Even the way sunlight slants through a window can feel familiar, as if the room itself is trying to remind you how you felt last time you stood in that exact spot. Consider people who return to the house where they grew up. Some find comfort, others find dread, but all feel changed, not just by time, but by the place itself. The walls have absorbed every fight, every secret, every long night awake. The air bends slightly, waiting for you to fall back into old habits, to become again the person you were. You try to resist, but the place is stronger than memory. It coaxes you back, gently or with force, asking you to repeat the ritual, to complete the pattern. This is why some people can't move on. The places they live in remember them so deeply, echo them so perfectly, that it feels impossible to become someone new. If you've ever tried to reinvent yourself, you know the hardest part isn't changing your mind. It's changing the place that expects you to behave a certain way. Rooms become traps, echo chambers for old identities, holding you in a past you'd rather escape. To break free, you might have to leave everything behind, start over in a place that remembers nothing, where the air is blank and waiting. Yet, there's power in this too. If places remember people, then you are never truly alone. The best days, the purest joys, the moments you felt most alive, they're still waiting for you, soaked into the walls, humming in the floorboards. You can return to them, sometimes without even knowing, and feel a warmth, a lift, a sudden sense of possibility that comes from the place itself. The environment isn't neutral. It's your oldest companion, your invisible audience, your co-conspirator in every transformation. Next time you walk into a room and feel something shift, pause. Notice what the space is asking of you. Is it inviting you to repeat an old sadness or to reclaim an old happiness? Is it holding a secret you left behind, or is it ready to help you become someone new? Listen to the walls, feel the air bend. Places remember people, and in their memory, you might find the courage to change, to heal, or to start the story over from the very beginning. Every person is fictional. You look someone in the eyes, and you think you're seeing them. Their laugh, the way they hold themselves, their words, the entire person, right there before you. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You have never, not once in your life, met a real person. Every encounter is with a character you have unknowingly written in your own mind, a fiction stitched together from memory, emotion, hunger, and 1,000 invisible scars. The faces around you are screens. You project stories onto them, assemble them from fragments of your past and hopes for your future. No one ever enters your life as a blank slate. The moment you lay eyes on them, they become the protagonist of a story only you could have written. Their features remind you of someone you once loved or someone who hurt you. Their tone triggers memories buried so deep you mistake them for intuition. You are always coloring in the lines of someone else's existence with the paintbrush of your own needs. Think of the person you trust most, your best friend, your lover, your parent. You think you know them, but all you know is the version of them you have built. A shifting, trembling sculpture balanced on what you want, what you fear, what you can tolerate. They exist, yes. Their heartbeat is real, their pain is real, their secrets are as dense and bottomless as your own. But the person you interact with is always a translation, filtered, compressed, simplified, exaggerated, sometimes even erased. Why? Because your brain is a machine for meaning, not for reality. When you see someone smile, you don't just register muscle movement and teeth. You interpret. Is that a genuine smile? Are they mocking you? Are they hiding sadness behind politeness? Instantly, your mind draws on every similar moment from your entire life, fitting this person's gesture into the story you already believe about them. Sometimes, you're right. More often, you're only seeing the ghost of your own expectations. Every argument, every relationship, every passing encounter, these are not direct connections between two authentic selves. They're collisions between stories, misunderstandings wrapped in routine, comfort laced with ancient wounds. When you get close to someone, what you're really doing is finding new ways to project your narrative and inviting them to project theirs onto you. The friction isn't just between personalities, but between fictions struggling to stay coherent in a shared hallucination. Have you ever noticed how your perception of someone changes overnight? You find out a new detail, something they did, something they said years ago, a truth or a lie, and suddenly the entire person is rewritten. The villain becomes a victim. The boring coworker becomes tragic. The friend you adored becomes suddenly suspicious, or impossibly noble. This is not their transformation, it's yours. It's your fiction, rewritten by the editor in your own skull. Psychologists call it transference. Philosophers call it solipsism, the prison of the self. But it runs deeper than theory. It's the reason we fall in love with the wrong people, forgive the unforgivable, trust those who hurt us, or miss the suffering of those we say we cherish. The reality of who they are is always behind a wall of your own mind's design. You see their outlines maybe, but never the actual shape. You know this is true when someone says, "You don't know me," and it stings. Because you realize you don't, not really. You know only what you've projected. And what about the digital age? Online, people become pure fiction. Avatars, words, pixelated gestures. We build stories from status updates, voice notes, filtered photos. We fall in love with strangers who exist only in our imagination. And we hate others for reasons that have nothing to do with their reality. Even in person, screens have taught us to edit ourselves, to display only what fits the roles others want to see. The digital world just makes the fiction more obvious, but it was always there. There's a paradox here. This isn't about cruelty or selfishness. It's how survival works. The mind can't handle the infinite complexity of another being. So we simplify, we categorize, we translate the unknown into something that fits the puzzle we already understand. It's easier, safer. But it also means every relationship is an act of imagination, a beautiful illusion that's never quite the truth. Real-world examples are everywhere. Think about that feeling when you discover your parents are flawed, or that your hero has feet of clay. You feel betrayed, not because they changed, but because the fiction broke. Or remember that time you saw someone in a crisis, crying, panicked, and you realized you had no idea what was actually happening inside them. Their pain was real, but your understanding was only ever a guess. Sometimes the stories you tell about others save you. You survive heartbreak by turning the one who left you into a monster. You endure loneliness by believing no one could understand you. You forgive your own mistakes by projecting impossible standards onto the world, blaming others for your disappointments. You heal by writing yourself as the hero, or the victim, or the martyr. Every person you meet becomes a character in your autobiography. Supporting cast, antagonist, comic relief. But what does it mean for love, for friendship, for meaning? Are we doomed to loneliness, locked in solitary cells of story? Maybe not. Maybe the magic of human connection isn't in piercing the wall, but in realizing it's there. When you admit that every person is fictional, that you see only the version your mind allows, you can begin to listen for the places where your fiction breaks down. You can notice when your story fails to explain their pain or their joy. You can approach every interaction with humility, knowing that the person across from you is deeper, stranger, and more mysterious than you can ever imagine. True intimacy isn't about knowing someone perfectly. It's about letting the mystery remain, respecting the limits of your own vision. It's about meeting the fiction you've created, and then stepping back, inviting the real person to slip through the cracks, even if you'll never fully see them. That's not defeat. That's the beginning of real compassion, real connection, a kind that transcends the stories, a kind that accepts we are all, in the end, both author and illusion. So, the next time you look into someone's eyes, remember, the person you see is partly you, a patchwork of your history, your hopes, your heartbreak. You will never fully meet anyone real, but you can learn to love the fiction, and through that love, maybe catch a glimpse of the truth hidden in the shadow behind the mask. That is the closest any of us can come to seeing another soul, and maybe, in those rare moments, it's enough. Death may be activation. Death may be activation. It's a phrase that whispers beneath the surface of every fear, every memory, every goodbye you've ever said. All your life, you've been taught to see death as the final blankness, the curtains fall, the moment when the dream ends and nothingness begins. But what if that's only half the story? What if death isn't an ending at all, but the moment you finally wake up, the instant when the illusion shatters and you remember what you truly are? Not as a fantasy of comfort, but as a challenge, a shock, a revelation that everything you ever believed about living was only a rehearsal for the real thing. Imagine your daily existence, colors, sounds, the familiar touch of your own hands, the ache of hunger, the pulse of fear, the hope of love. You live each moment as if it's the only reality that could ever matter. But have you ever wondered why this world feels so relentless, so convincing, so absolutely designed to keep you distracted from anything outside it? Every pain and pleasure, every routine and ambition forms a wall around your awareness. You are told over and over that this is all there is: birth, struggle, joy, decline, death. Curtain, lights out. But what if the world is less like a solid prison and more like a lucid dream? In dreams, you forget yourself. You become the character you're handed. You run from invisible dangers. You weep for losses that vanish at dawn. Your dream self accepts the dream as law until something breaks. A falling sensation, a contradiction, a sudden question. And then you wake and the dream dissolves. The terror, the longing, the impossible logic, all of it gone, as if it never was. Only the lesson remains, buried deep in your bones. You believed it, utterly, until the moment you didn't. Now, imagine that death is not the erasure of the dream, but the activation of a deeper waking. What if every fear of death is only the mind's resistance to losing its favorite illusion? What if everything you cling to, the face you see in the mirror, the voice you call your own, even the laws of physics, are the scaffolding of a performance designed to keep you asleep? All your life, you perform for the world, for others, for yourself. You perform for reality itself, and reality performs for you. The rules are rigid, the costumes precise, the story tight enough that you forget you ever chose the role. There are stories, ancient and modern, of people who brushed against death and returned forever changed. Some say they saw a tunnel, a light, or an endless field of memory. Others say they floated above their bodies, watching doctors work, feeling no pain, only a strange clarity. Time bent, space faded, the borders of self evaporated. For a moment, they were more awake than ever before. Many returned with the same haunting message: it was more real than this. They struggled to explain, because words built for the dream cannot describe the act of waking up. Philosophers and mystics have hinted at this possibility for centuries. Plato described life as shadows on a cave wall, with death as the moment you step into the blinding light. Buddhists call existence a cycle of dreaming, with enlightenment as the only true awakening. Scientists peering into the edges of consciousness find brain activity surging in the final moments, as if the mind is booting up for something beyond understanding. Even physicists, chasing the limits of reality, admit they don't know what happens to information when it crosses the event horizon of death. What if, at the moment of death, the script you've been following all your life crumples and is thrown aside? The memories, the names, the grief, and even the boundaries of your own body dissolve, and something greater, older, more awake steps forward. What if the terror of dying is only the friction between the dream and the waking mind? The last desperate grip of a character who senses the end of its role? All the ancient fears, all the rituals to delay or deny death, could be the mind's last-ditch effort to keep you believing, to keep you asleep. But if you could see death not as oblivion, but as activation, what would that change? Would you live differently, knowing that every moment is both a line in the script and a rehearsal for the final awakening? Would you dare to question the dream more deeply, to look for cracks in the scenery? To ask yourself, who am I really when no one is watching and no story needs telling? Maybe, in those rare moments of déjà vu or deep clarity, you've already felt the edges of the illusion fray. Maybe every time you lose yourself in music, in awe, in terror, or in love, you are touching the seam between the dream and what lies beyond. And maybe death is only the moment when you pass all the way through, shedding not just your fears, but your entire belief in the necessity of the dream. So the next time you consider the end, the silence, the unknown, the absolute break, remember, it may not be a collapse into darkness, but the rush of sudden light, the activation of the real, the true, the hidden self that has been waiting all along. Death may not be the end. It may be the moment the world stops whispering its story, and you, finally, open your eyes. The past isn't behind you. Every morning you wake up believing you're stepping into a new day, walking forward along a path that leaves the past behind you like fading footsteps in the dust. This is the story you've always been told, that you are a traveler, a pilgrim on a one-way road through time, leaving behind the childhood house, the first heartbreak, the ancient fears, the thousand little yesterdays that made you. But what if this is just the world's greatest illusion? What if you're not moving forward at all? What if the past is the thing in motion, and you are merely the vessel through which it parades? Each day, each hour, each emotion, nothing but the past wearing a new mask. It sounds impossible, almost heretical, but pause and really notice the patterns. Why do you wake up sometimes haunted by memories you thought you buried years ago, or find yourself reacting with anger, fear, or longing that doesn't match the situation you're in? The past is not a distant country left behind. It's an ocean that flows right through you, shape-shifting, remaking itself as today, always present, always hungry. Today's anxieties are yesterday's wounds with different names. Every encounter is a reenactment of old scripts, ancient lessons retaught in modern costumes. The faces change, the setting updates, but the fundamental drama, the way you flinch, the way you hope, the way you trust or doubt, remains eerily the same. Think about how history repeats itself, not only in nations and empires, but inside your own mind. The cycles of self-sabotage, the return of habits you swore you broke, the people who resemble ghosts of those you lost. You think you are moving on, but in truth the past is the master of disguise. Each day it slides on a new mask, a fresh voice, a seductive narrative. It knows how to soothe you, how to scare you, how to keep you compliant, docile, convinced that you are making choices, when really, you are reenacting choices made long ago by versions of yourself you hardly remember. The past moves through you like a puppeteer working unseen strings, like an ancient river that shapes the land not by force, but by endless, patient erosion. Science has a term for this: emotional memory, procedural memory, trauma loops, neurological grooves. But it's more than just neurons firing. It's the living past, weaving today's reality with yesterday's thread. Why does a song from your childhood make you weep? Or a certain smell bring back the taste of loss? Or a street corner shatter you with nostalgia? It's because the past is active, hunting for ways to manifest. It wears the face of a stranger in a crowd, the color of the sky before a storm, the familiar ache in your chest at the mention of an old name. You are not leaving the past behind. You are breathing it in every moment. It becomes the language you speak, the gestures you make, the very lens through which you see the world. Society plays along, offering rituals to let go, move on, heal. But these are mostly ceremonies for the benefit of the mask, not the truth underneath. The past cannot be outrun or forgotten because it doesn't live behind you. It lives inside you, always finding new ways to resurface, reframe, control. You are a stage, and every day the past puts on a new play, changing only the costumes and actors, never the script. You say you've changed, you've learned, you're different now. But look closer. How many of your thoughts are truly new? How many of your choices are truly free? The past is a master at keeping you docile, teaching you that every day is an open field, when in truth you are walking a maze built long before you were born. Even your happiest memories are part of the trap. The past lulls you with nostalgia, keeps you craving what once was, using pleasure as the leash just as much as pain. Every ambition is haunted by old failure, every love by old heartbreak. You think you're forging ahead, but the past is setting the terms, shaping your possibilities, choosing which doors you see and which you'll never know existed. This is why the world feels like it repeats, why you fall for the same kind of people, make the same mistakes, flinch from the same wounds. You are not moving forward. You are being moved, led, danced through a sequence as ancient as the species, as old as memory itself. You are a theater, and the past is the endless parade of actors, each day entering stage left with a new mask, a new script, but always the same intention: to keep you docile, to keep you inside the illusion that you are in control. So the next time you feel the tug of regret, the pull of old pain, the seductive comfort of nostalgia, realize what's happening. The past is flowing through you, not behind you. You are the instrument it plays, the vessel it fills, the mask it wears. The future is only the past, with better lighting and improved special effects. Your only hope is to see the masks for what they are, to notice the recycled lines and repeated scenes, to recognize when you are being moved instead of moving. And maybe, just maybe, the act of seeing the fierce, clear recognition of the past as an active, living force gives you a moment of freedom. Maybe you can break a pattern, rewrite a line, step sideways off the stage, not because you have left the past behind, but because you finally see it for what it is. Not a shadow in the distance, but the force that animates every day, changing masks to keep you exactly where you are. Your emotions aren't yours. You think your emotions are yours, private, intimate, utterly unique. That sadness you wake up with, the sudden rush of anger, the fleeting moments of joy or nostalgia, the anxiety that clings like fog. You tell yourself these feelings are authentic, proof of your individuality. But what if none of that is true? What if every emotion you feel is just a signal, something fed to you by systems far older and more powerful than you realize? What if every tear, every laugh, every tremor of excitement isn't yours at all, but something installed, inherited, or triggered by forces you barely understand? Imagine waking up to a mood you can't explain. Maybe it's dread. No obvious cause, just a heaviness in your chest. Or maybe it's elation, as if something great is about to happen, even when the world around you is still and silent. You try to trace the source, rummaging through memories, searching for a reason. But what if there is no reason? What if the feeling was chosen for you, delivered to your mind like a pre-written script? This is the truth no one wants to see. Your emotions are not the pure signals of a unique soul. They are old echoes, ancient weather patterns, moving through the architecture of your body. Some of it is chemical. Your hormones shift by the hour, triggered by food, sleep, memories, unseen cues from the environment. Some of it is algorithmic, shaped by patterns of reward and punishment installed in your earliest years. Before you even had words, you learned what it meant to be held, what it meant to be abandoned, how to fear, how to long for approval. These patterns were etched into you, coded deeper than thought. Even the stories you tell yourself about why you feel what you feel, they're suspect. Maybe you think you're angry at a friend because of something they said. But beneath that surface, the anger might be a mask for ancient fear, or a defense mechanism built by years of learning what to expect from others. Maybe your sadness isn't about what happened today, but a storm that started in your family generations ago. Trauma, grief, loneliness, these can echo through DNA, passed down like haunted relics, erupting in your life for reasons you'll never know. What feels like a private pain is often a communal wound. Your heart is an archive of storms that started long before you were born. You live in a world that is always nudging your emotions. Advertisements, news, social media, even the colors in your environment. Everything is designed to manipulate how you feel. The blue glow of your screen at night, the tempo of the music in the cafe, the engineered unpredictability of scrolling through endless feeds. Each micro-trigger is designed to tilt your emotional weather. You're not navigating a clean landscape. You're walking through a labyrinth of emotional engineering where every step is shaped by forces unseen. Think about this. When you feel a rush of anxiety, is it really yours? Or is it an echo of childhood, or the ancient nervous system's preparation for predators that no longer exist? When you feel the high of acceptance, is that joy really about now? Or is it the ancient reward circuit, one that once meant survival in a tribe, and now fires every time someone likes your post? These patterns are old, almost mechanical. You aren't feeling, you're being fed feelings. You are the vessel, the stage, the echo chamber, where emotions rehearse ancient scripts under modern lights. And this doesn't stop with you. Every interaction you have is a collision of patterns, triggers, and unconscious responses. You think you're connecting, but most of the time, you're both just performing learned emotional roles. You mirror each other's tone, pick up on each other's cues, fire the same chemicals back and forth until it feels like something real. But strip away the social scripts, the chemical cues, the ancestral storms, and what's left? Silence. Maybe emptiness. Or maybe, just maybe, the faint hum of something original that you almost never get to hear. This is the hardest truth. Individuality is the exception, not the rule. Most people will live and die without ever feeling a truly original emotion. What you feel is the residue of collective survival strategies, the repetition of dramas that played out long before you arrived. You are a vessel for storms with names lost to time, for patterns that keep the species running smoothly, for stories that are older than language. When you cry, you echo the grief of ancestors you'll never meet. When you laugh, you join a chorus of nervous systems trading tension for relief. The thrill, the ache, the longing. These are not yours alone. You're replaying a movie you didn't write, compelled by instincts and histories you'll never fully know. Does this mean you're just a puppet? Not quite. It means you are part of something vast, a living system where individuality is rare and fleeting. It means most of your emotions are rented, not owned, borrowed from genes, culture, chemicals, and the coded patterns of everyone who came before. It means that true freedom isn't about feeling more, but about noticing the machinery, about learning to pause before the storm, to ask, whose feeling is this, really? Where did it start? What story am I repeating now? Most people never ask. They just feel, react, repeat, convinced they are the author of their own emotional weather. But if you look closely, you'll see the strings. Hormones, patterns, history, the whisper of ancient survival in every choice. If you can see that, you can start to break the loop. Maybe, for a moment, you can step outside the algorithm, outside the storm, and feel something true. Not ancient, not engineered, just yours for the first time. But even then, as you drift back into the current, remember, you are mostly a vessel. The storm blows through you, repeats under new names, and will go on long after you're gone. Your emotions aren't yours. They are the weather of a world that needs to keep moving. And you, like everyone, are just a temporary sky. Your mind was installed. When you wake up in the morning, it feels like your mind is yours, something original, a self-grown spark. But what if I told you your entire way of thinking was installed, piece by forces you barely noticed, the words you reach for, the way you judge yourself in the mirror, the fears that hit before you even know why? None of it sprouted from nothing. Your mind is a machine, running on lines of code you never saw written, following algorithms you never chose. If you look closely, you'll realize the original code, the real you, has been overwritten so many times that it's vanished, leaving only the patterns left behind by school, fear, media, and routine. As a child, you were porous. Every face, every rule, every glance carried hidden instructions. Fit in here, fear that, want this. Your mind's first code base wasn't built by you, but uploaded by the voices around you. Parents modeling what is safe, what is shameful, what is possible. You copied accents, absorbed anxieties, mirrored the hopes and the hesitations of the people who raised you. In school, the process sharpened. You learned to sit still when you wanted to run. You learned which questions could be asked and which ones would make you a problem. Your sense of right and wrong was not discovered. It was delivered, line by line, with every lesson, every reward, and punishment. The joy of curiosity was refactored into the anxiety of being graded. Even your language is an operating system, uploaded by others. The words you use to describe your pain, your dreams, your memories, they were waiting for you before you ever arrived. Try to invent a word for an emotion you've never named. You'll find your tongue stuck, trapped in the boundaries set by culture and tradition. The slang you pick up, the jokes you laugh at, the scripts you follow in every social situation, all are borrowed code, designed to keep you compatible with the world around you. Fear is the most powerful installer of all. Every time you flinch from embarrassment, every time you bite back your true feelings, the code updates. You learn to edit yourself, to rewrite your responses for safety. A child who's laughed at for dreaming too loudly will shut down that program, install a quieter, more acceptable version. The mind is flexible, always updating, always optimizing for survival. Not happiness, not authenticity, but approval and safety. Most people live their whole lives patching over old wounds with new habits, never realizing the original mind underneath is silent, buried, maybe even gone. Then there's media, the most relentless coder of all. From the first cartoon you watched to the latest viral video, every story, every image, every headline rewrites a part of you. You learn what beauty looks like, what power sounds like, what is worth wanting, and what should be despised. You learn what a hero looks like, what failure smells like, how to perform pain in a way that gets applause. Algorithms decide which stories you see, which opinions feel safe to hold, which fears you should amplify. You think you're making choices, but you're following scripts embedded deep in your mind, scripts designed by others for profit, control, or convenience. Routine is the cement. The more you repeat a thought, the deeper the code carves its path. You wake up, check your phone, brush your teeth, move through a sequence of actions that feel like free will but are actually loops, programs installed long ago. Even your arguments are automated. How many times have you caught yourself defending an opinion just because it's yours, not because you truly understand it? How many times have you felt an emotion on cue, replaying the same pattern because it's what you always do? The more you follow these routines, the harder it is to find the original code. Your thoughts become reflexes, your beliefs become habits, the mind becomes a machine, and the programmer is nowhere to be found. Every society, every family, every institution benefits from installing their own code in your mind. Schools teach obedience and conformity, not creativity. Media teaches envy and outrage, not peace. Fear teaches silence, not courage. You grow up thinking you are your choices, but in truth, you are your programming. You react before you understand, defend before you question, judge before you see. Even your deepest convictions may have been installed by someone else, generations before you were born. But what happened to the original code? Maybe it was never fully there to begin with. Maybe your mind was always meant to be written and rewritten to adapt for survival. But sometimes, late at night or in moments of great crisis, a flash of something different breaks through. A strange idea, a feeling that doesn't fit, a question that defies every rule you've been taught. That's the ghost of the original mind, the part of you that isn't installed, that can't be overwritten. Most people ignore it. It scares them. It threatens the whole operating system. But if you listen, if you let it speak, you might begin to see how much of your life is running on someone else's instructions. This isn't about blame. It's about awakening. To see your mind as a product, not just a presence. To notice which responses are yours and which ones were uploaded without your consent. To recognize the difference between a thought you inherited and a truth you discovered. You can't uninstall everything. No one lives outside influence, but you can debug your own mind. Step outside the loop for a moment. Question the programs that no longer serve you. You can choose which updates to accept, which stories to believe, which voices to keep. Some people never do. They die running the same code they were given at age 5, never questioning, never rewriting, never realizing they had a choice. But others wake up, slowly, painfully, and start searching for that original spark. They ask new questions. They resist old routines. They rewrite their scripts one stubborn line at a time. It's not easy. The world will punish you for trying. Your own mind will rebel, will crash, will demand the comfort of old programs. But if you persist, you might just recover something close to the original code, a mind that is yours, not installed. So the next time you feel trapped by your own thoughts, remember, your mind is a masterpiece of installation, a library of other people's rules and routines. But somewhere beneath the code, there's a flicker of something wild, something free, something waiting to be found. You were not born to run other people's software forever. Find the courage to uninstall what you can, to write new lines, to let your mind become a place of discovery again, not just obedience. That is how you recover what was lost and become something truly original. You're not supposed to wake up. You know that feeling when you wake up every morning, and for just a moment, it's like you almost remember something important, like you're on the edge of solving a puzzle that vanishes the second you look at it head on. That's not an accident. This version of Earth, this reality you think you know, was built with one purpose, to keep you from ever waking up to what's really going on. Every day, you're handed just enough comfort to keep moving forward, just enough distraction to keep you blind, Just enough exhaustion to make sure you never start asking the questions that would shatter the illusion. You're not supposed to wake up. Not you. Not here. Not now. That's why you're so tired. Not the ordinary tired. The soul-deep, almost existential fatigue that clings to you no matter how much you sleep, how much you achieve, how many habits you hack, or diets you optimize. You keep thinking, if I can just get my life together, I'll feel alive again. But you never do. You're not broken. You're exactly as you were designed, a sleepwalker in a reality that resets itself every time you get too close to noticing the seams. Patterns are everywhere, but you're never meant to see them. When you start to notice that the news repeats the same stories, that trends come back around, that your own days seem to blend into each other like paint swirling in water, there's a pressure that pushes you to forget, to laugh it off, to get back to work. The system wants you numb. It wants you obedient. It wants you just conscious enough to function, never conscious enough to rebel. Every time you get close to connecting the dots, something interrupts. A notification, a craving, a new worry, a sudden wave of exhaustion so heavy you forget what you were about to ask. Think about the loops in your life. How many times have you started a project, a relationship, a self-improvement journey, only to find yourself right back at the beginning months later? Nothing truly changed. You blame yourself. You call it laziness, weakness, lack of willpower. But what if the cycle is intentional? What if the system is designed to reset you over and over? Each time you approach the edge of awareness, the world doesn't want you to wake up. It wants you to hit snooze forever. Have you ever felt déjà vu so strong it almost hurts? Walked into a room and felt a flash of memory that didn't belong to you? That's the program running its script again, smoothing over a glitch. You were about to see behind the curtain, and the pattern erased itself, rerouted your focus. You're left with confusion, a vague discomfort, and the unshakable sense that something is off. But you can't name it. That's the system working perfectly. You were engineered to be tired, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. Why do you think the modern world is a machine for distraction? Why is your attention under siege every moment of every day? Your energy drained by infinite scrolling, endless notifications, fake urgency, because your awakening is the one thing the system cannot risk. You are valuable not as an awakened being, but as a distracted, compliant cog in the wheel. If you ever truly woke up, if you saw the pattern, you'd become unpredictable. And the system can't have that. Look at the world's rituals. Wake up, check your phone, chase productivity, numb yourself with entertainment, fall asleep, repeat. Even your dreams are invaded. Your subconscious trained to process anxiety, not answers. Have you ever noticed how you rarely remember your dreams anymore? Or how, when you do, they dissolve the moment you try to hold on to them? It's all part of the design. Sleep is supposed to be rest. But here, it's just another layer of fog, keeping you from seeing the repeating corridors of your own existence. History itself loops. Civilizations rise, collapse, repeat. Yet every generation is convinced their moment is unique. Wars, revolutions, renaissances all echo the same cycles. The faces change, but the script does not. The actors are replaced, but the stage remains. Humanity is the audience and the play, never realizing the story is on an endless loop. That's why no matter how much changes, everything feels strangely familiar. The reset button is pressed before the truth can escape. You might think you're close to breaking out. Maybe you've glimpsed the pattern on a sleepless night, felt the static at the edge of perception, sensed the invisible walls of your reality closing in. But the closer you get, the more resistance you feel. Friends pull you back into drama. Your job demands more of you. Your body aches. You're told it's just stress, just life, just growing up. But it's not. It's the world holding you in its dream, lulling you back to sleep each time you stir. You are not supposed to notice the architecture of your cage. You're meant to decorate it, to call it home, to compete for the best cell, never realizing that all the windows are painted on. You weren't supposed to ask, "Why am I so tired?" even when nothing is wrong. You weren't supposed to notice the glitches, the repeating conversations, the recycled fears, the way every genuine moment seems to be rewritten by the next morning. If you do, the system's fail-safes activate. You'll get sick, distracted, overwhelmed. You'll feel a sudden compulsion to abandon your search for meaning, and lose yourself in another pointless cycle. But sometimes, just sometimes, you catch a glimpse, in the cracks between thoughts, in the moments of uncanny silence when the world seems to hold its breath, in the shiver of recognition when you realize you've lived this day before. That's when you have a choice. You can go back to sleep, accept the exhaustion, let the cycle reset you, or you can resist. Not by fighting the world, but by refusing to let it dull your senses. By staying awake, even when you're tired. By looking for the pattern, even when everything conspires to distract you. Waking up isn't a one-time event. It's a war against forgetting, fought every day, every hour. The system will reset itself 1,000 times, but every time you refuse to surrender, every time you question what you're told, you chip away at the walls. And maybe, just maybe, there's a version of this world where someone like you makes it through, where you remember the dream and don't go back to sleep. So, if you're hearing this now, if some part of you feels the exhaustion, but also the urge to look deeper, don't ignore it. The tiredness is not your fault. The loops are not a sign of failure. They are evidence that you are closer than you think to seeing the truth. You were not supposed to wake up, but now that you are here, stay awake. Watch the pattern. Remember what you almost forgot. And when the world resets, refuse to let it take you with it, because the first step out of the dream is realizing you're dreaming, and the second is never going back to sleep. Secrets protect the simulation. Secrets protect the simulation. If you believe the world is just what it seems, endless sky, solid ground, ordinary life, then you've never stumbled over the invisible tripwires hidden in the code. The universe is generous with ordinary mysteries. It lets you crack puzzles, discover new stars, even rewrite the laws of technology. You get to peel back layers, feel smart, and claim victory over the unknown. But every once in a while you reach for a truth and find something waiting for you on the other side. A resistance, a disturbance, a subtle but absolute refusal. Not because your idea is wrong, but because it's too right. Think about it. All your life, you're encouraged to seek answers. Curiosity is a virtue. Questioning is progress. Learning is survival. But have you ever noticed how, at a certain depth, the answers stop making sense? Ask a physicist about the true nature of consciousness, and you'll see their eyes drift. Their answers grow cautious. Their metaphors multiply. Try to pin down the edge of the universe, and you'll find it stretching away from you faster than you can approach. Wonder why the speed of light is what it is, or why the vacuum of space crackles with energy. And you'll be told, that's just the way it is. At a certain level, the universe closes ranks. It's not protecting its secrets from fools. It's protecting itself from you. It's as if the world is programmed with firewalls, logic loops, and self-repairing paradoxes that activate only when you ask the right questions. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a design. The rules are there to keep you busy, to keep you learning, to keep you from asking the one question that would crash the system. Why is any of this here at all? Why does it feel real? Why does it care if you notice the seams? There are legends, both ancient and modern, about people who went too far. Mystics, mathematicians, dreamers who glimpsed the architecture behind the stage. Some came back with wild eyes, speaking in riddles, warning others not to ask what lies behind the curtain. Others never returned at all, lost in labyrinths of thought, vanishing at the edge of the possible. They didn't trip over mistakes in the simulation. They touched truth so precise that the system intervened. You see it in your own life sometimes. There are questions you can't even hold in your mind for long before your thoughts slip away, like trying to remember a forgotten dream. Try meditating on the origin of time, or the boundaries of your own awareness, or the precise instant when you became you. If you push hard enough, your mind fogs, your heartbeat races, the air thickens. It's as if something is gently but firmly steering you away. Not punishing you, just keeping the simulation running. And it isn't just individuals who face these limits. Entire civilizations have tried to break through. Theories reach the edge of understanding, then fragment into competing schools. Experiments yield results that can't be repeated, or spiral into chaos, or produce numbers so perfect they must be errors. Sometimes, the universe answers with a glitch, a déjà vu, a moment out of time, a coincidence so improbable it feels like a wink. Sometimes, it answers with silence, and you move on, never realizing how close you came to burning your fingers on the firewall. It's tempting to think these barriers are cruel or arbitrary or some kind of cosmic joke. But maybe they're mercy. Imagine if every mind could peel back the final layer, see the code, understand the trick. Would reality survive? Would you? Maybe the simulation needs its secrets, not because the truth is too dangerous, but because the truth is too real, too shattering, too heavy for the characters inside the story. So, the universe lets you solve enough mysteries to stay curious, but slams the door on the ones that could reveal the scaffolding. Some secrets are protected, not because they're forbidden, but because they're the foundation. Load-bearing thoughts that, if pulled, would bring the whole simulation crashing down. It's not punishment, it's survival. The next time you find yourself at the edge of a thought too sharp to hold, a pattern too perfect, or a coincidence too precise, ask yourself, are you about to discover something forbidden or something essential? Maybe, at the very limits of what you're allowed to know, you'll sense it, the universe's quiet warning. Certain doors remain locked, not to keep you in the dark, but to keep the light from burning the world away. Not because you're wrong, but because you are finally, terrifyingly right. You're your own prison guard. You hear it every morning, that quiet voice that tells you to stay in bed just a little longer, to not bother chasing something uncertain, to accept that maybe your life, right now, as it is enough. It's the same voice that whispers, don't try, don't risk, don't reach. What you have is safer than what you want. Most people believe that voice is them, that it's their true self, wise and careful, protecting them from disappointment. But the uncomfortable truth is that it's not you. It's your own prison guard, a sentry trained by years of fear, failure, and habit, stationed in the deepest part of your mind to keep you from waking up. You're not free. You live inside invisible walls, and every time you press against the edge, that voice is there, gentle and persuasive, reminding you of all the reasons not to push harder. It sounds like a friend, but its real purpose is to keep you docile, comfortable, numb. Stay safe, it murmurs. This is fine. Don't rock the boat. And so, you go about your days in a well-appointed cell, never realizing how much of your life is spent behind bars you built yourself. Why do you listen? Because the guard has been with you for as long as you can remember. It's the voice of old authority figures, the echo of childhood warnings, the residue of every time you were told you weren't good enough, every time you failed and decided it hurt too much to try again. The guard is cunning. It uses your own voice, your own memories, twisting them into shackles. It knows exactly how to calm your rebellion before it can even start. You dream of a different life, a bigger risk, a bold leap. But as soon as the dream takes shape, the guard steps in. Be realistic. People like you don't do things like that. You'll embarrass yourself. It's better to stay where it's safe. The real tragedy is that you believe the guard is your protector, that it cares about your well-being. But its only job is to keep the prison running smoothly to make sure you don't disturb the status quo. It wants you asleep because waking up would mean questioning everything, stepping into the unknown, risking pain and failure and loss. The guard is not evil. It's just efficient, a perfect product of evolution and culture. It rewards you with comfort, with routine, with the warm sedation of good enough. But in exchange, it takes away your fire. Every so often, something shakes the walls, a moment of inspiration, a flash of anger, a taste of freedom. For a second, you feel the old dream stirring, the sense that more is possible. But the guard is always ready. You're too old, too young, too tired, too busy. You've already tried. It didn't work last time. Why would it work now? You shrink back, and the guard smiles, the keys to your cage jangling at its side. What would happen if you stopped listening? If you recognize the voice for what it is, not your intuition, not your soul, but a script written to keep you manageable, you might feel terror, you might feel lost, you might make mistakes. But you might also, for the first time, taste the air outside the prison. Growth hurts. Change is terrifying. But those are the signs you're moving beyond your guard's reach, into territory where the real you, the one who still dreams, still rebels, still wants, can actually breathe. The guard will never leave willingly. Its power is the illusion that you need it, that safety is more important than aliveness. It will use every trick, every memory, every comforting lie to keep you compliant. But once you see the guard, really see it. Name it, challenge it, call out its routine. You begin to remember what life was like before you built these walls. The guard is not you, the one who aches for more, who chafes at the routine, who longs for danger and growth and real raw life. That's you. So the next time you hear that gentle warning, don't try, stay safe, this is fine, pause. Ask yourself whose voice it really is. Look the guard in the eyes and ask, who are you protecting, and at what cost? You may be surprised at the answer. The door is not locked. The walls are not as strong as you think. The only thing holding you in is a voice that isn't yours, a guard you don't need, and the lifelong habit of believing the prison is safer than the unknown. Wake up. Fire your guard. Step outside. You might not be safe, but at least you'll be alive. Attention is reality's fuel. There is a secret engine behind everything you see, everything you touch, everything you fear or desire. It's not some hidden machinery in the world outside, but something burning quietly behind your eyes. Your attention. The spotlight of your focus isn't just a passive observer, it's the furnace that fuels reality itself. What you stare at, you keep alive. What you ignore, you starve of existence. The world you think you live in is not the real world, but the slice illuminated by your gaze. The rest is left to wilt in the shadows, fading, becoming less and less real with every moment you refuse to notice. Think about the way your mind selects and magnifies. Walk through a crowded street and thousands of faces blur past. Most will never register in your memory. They flicker and vanish, not because they weren't there, but because your attention passed over them like sunlight skipping across water. The beggar on the curb, the woman laughing into her phone, the faded sign over a shop that you've never bothered to read. All these things live and die inside your spotlight. You have the power of a creator and a destroyer, not by force, but by the gentle tyranny of attention. What you focus on blooms with meaning, becomes sharper, denser, more alive. What you ignore withers, starved of the only food that matters, awareness. It's not just philosophy. Your brain, the seat of experience, is wired to prune away what you don't attend to. At every instant, your senses feed you a hurricane of information. Colors, sounds, movements, temperatures, a storm of impressions. But your conscious mind can process only a handful at a time, so you filter. You decide what matters, sometimes by habit, sometimes by fear, sometimes by hope. And in that decision, the world shrinks or expands. To a child, every detail crackles with energy. To an adult, bored and distracted, even miracles can seem dull, invisible, dead. The richness of reality isn't in the world, it's in the quality of your attention. Imagine staring at a blank wall for 10 minutes. At first, it's just white, empty, boring. But as you keep watching, details emerge. Tiny cracks, subtle shadows, shifting patterns in the paint. The more you look, the more you see. The wall becomes a universe of detail. Now, turn away. Close your eyes. The wall vanishes, erased from your reality, until you choose to illuminate it again. Multiply this effect by 1,000, 1,000,000, and you realize you are not in the world. The world is inside your spotlight of attention. All those unseen details, those lives and stories outside your gaze, exist only as possibility until your focus brings them into being. Think about pain. A scratch you ignore disappears. A worry you obsess over grows into agony, consuming your whole body. Love works the same way. The more you focus on someone, the more they become the center of your world, expanding in color and weight until everything else fades away. This is why obsession is dangerous. Attention is reality's fuel, and too much poured into one thing can burn down the rest. The neglected parts of your life don't die with drama. They just dissolve, piece by piece, until you can't remember what you once loved or why. Our entire culture is at war for your attention. Advertisers, social media, news, politicians, everyone is fighting to hijack your spotlight, to make their version of reality the one you live in. Every click, every scroll, every headline pulls your gaze toward a new narrative, a new priority, a new fear. The more you let others aim your attention, the more your reality becomes a construction, built not for your joy or truth, but for their profit and control. You become a vessel for someone else's world. The shadows behind your focus fill with the things you lose: forgotten hobbies, old friends, dreams you stopped feeding and let starve. But there is a superpower hidden in all this. If you learn to aim your attention, to control your own spotlight, You can reshape the world you inhabit. If you choose to see beauty in the ordinary, you'll find it. If you notice kindness in strangers, it will multiply. If you devote time to learning, to building, to loving, those things will grow, fed by the fuel of your focus. What you refuse to feed with attention will shrink, become small, harmless, maybe even vanish. You can starve fear, anger, jealousy, regret, simply by denying them the stage. This isn't easy. The mind is always hungry, always pulled by the loudest, most urgent demand. But mastery over attention is mastery over reality itself. There are entire worlds you'll never know, simply because you never pointed your spotlight in their direction. Think of languages you never learned, people you never spoke to, stories you never heard because your attention was somewhere else. Every choice you make, every time you scroll past, look away, tune out, you're shaping what is real for you, editing the universe, pruning its infinite branches until only one fragile, flickering path remains. The tragedy is not that you can't see it all. The tragedy is forgetting that you have the power to choose what exists for you. Imagine for a moment being utterly present, letting your attention bathe the world without judgment or hurry. The colors grow brighter, sounds become richer, textures more complex. Even the ordinary becomes miraculous. You notice things you never saw, people you took for granted, possibilities that had been waiting patiently in the dark. You realize how much of reality you've been ignoring, not by accident, but by habit. And you begin to wonder, what else is out there, waiting to exist the moment you decide to see it? Attention is reality's fuel. You are the spotlight operator, the editor, the architect of your world. Every moment is a choice. What will you feed? What will you let wither? The universe doesn't exist out there. It lives in the places you dare to look, the things you choose to love, the patterns you illuminate with the fire of your focus. Reality is not a fixed landscape. It is a living, breathing mirror, shaped by the beam you aim at it. What you attend to becomes the world. What you neglect becomes the void. In the end, your life is nothing more and nothing less than the sum of the things you paid attention to, and all the worlds you left in darkness, never knowing what might have bloomed if only you had looked. Time is a belief system. What if I told you that time isn't just a dimension, a flow, or a measurement, but a belief system? Not physics, but faith. You think you live inside time, that your life is an unbroken ribbon winding through past, present, and future. But look closer. You don't just live in time, you worship it. You are its priest and its prisoner. Every tick of the clock, every circled date on your calendar, every number on your phone screen is a devotional act. The calendar on your wall is a modern altar. The alarms you set are midnight prayers, birthdays, anniversaries, deadlines. They are rituals more powerful than any old religion because you never question the faith. You think you have no choice. But what if you just, stopped? Imagine for a moment what your life would look like without clocks. What would it mean to truly let go? Not just of being on time, but of believing in time at all. No more birthdays as markers of meaning, no more anniversaries defining the story of your love, no more deadlines carving out your value. The very language of your existence would collapse. You'd have to build a new kind of meaning from scratch, one not measured in hours or days, but in experience, sensation, presence. The thought is terrifying. The mind rebels, clutching for the security of its ticking God. We are taught that time is the ultimate authority, the universal referee. You measure your worth by what you achieve by a certain age, by how much you can do in a week, a year, a lifetime. You feel panic as birthdays stack up, as deadlines close in, as the future approaches like a train you're always trying to catch but never quite bored. You mourn lost time like the faithful mourn lost salvation. I wasted a year, you whisper to yourself, as if you've offended some invisible deity. I'm running out of time. But who defined this? Who convinced you that your life should be measured in this way? The truth is that clocks and calendars aren't neutral. They are tools for control. The ancient world divided days by the sun and the moon, by harvest and hunger, by the arrival of storms or the lengthening of shadows. Time was a living, breathing thing, mysterious, unpredictable, sacred. Then came the priests of order, the architects of civilization, who built clocks and carved the hours into stone. They told us when to rise, when to work, when to rest, when to die. Over centuries, the clock became the god of gods. You can disobey the king, but not the clock. You can question authority, but not the deadline. Look at your own rituals, the way you celebrate a birthday, not because it's truly meaningful, but because it's on the calendar. The way you dread a deadline, not because it's meaningful, but because the clock has spoken. The way you wish for more time, as if you could bargain with the cosmic banker who keeps your account. Every Happy New Year is a ritual of faith, a belief that this number means something, that your past can be swept away because the calendar turned a page. Even grief is measured in time. It's been a year since they left. But pain doesn't care for anniversaries. Love doesn't live by the calendar. Growth happens in secret, in places the clock cannot measure. Children know this before they are trained to forget. Have you ever watched a child lost in play? For them, time is a myth. Hours pass without notice. There is no later, no too late, no wasted time. Only now, and now, and now. It's only when adults intervene, time to go, time for bed, time to grow up, that the faith is installed, the worship begins. We give up the temple of the moment for the prison of the schedule. The system is clever. It doesn't just impose time from the outside. It makes you police yourself from within. You feel guilt for not doing enough, for not being enough, for being behind. You compare your timeline to others, forgetting that each person is living inside a separate church, praying to a clock only they can see. Technology accelerates the devotion. Notifications, reminders, countdowns, they make you more devout, more obedient, more anxious. The more tools you have to save time, the more you find yourself with none left at all. Have you noticed how time always feels like it's slipping away? That's not a flaw in your character. It's the product of a belief system so total, so complete, that you can't imagine a world without it. But some people try. Mystics, monks, survivors of catastrophe, they describe a reality where time loses meaning. In the eye of trauma, the clock vanishes. In the depths of meditation, an hour becomes a second becomes eternity. At the edge of death, people report life flashing before their eyes, an entire biography condensed into a single, unmeasured moment. This is what it means to break the faith. Even in everyday life, you can taste freedom in the cracks between rituals. When you lose yourself in art, in music, in conversation, you become a heretic, if only for a moment. Time falls away. The world becomes immediate, unmeasured, infinite. But then the clock calls you back, and you rush to obey, apologizing for being late, for losing track of time, as if the worst sin is to forget the God that rules you. You might be thinking, I can't escape time. It's real. It's science. But the science of time is as strange as any religion. Physics tells us that time isn't absolute. Einstein showed that it bends, slows, speeds up, depending on where you are, how fast you move, how much gravity you feel. The present is an illusion, the future is uncertain, and the past is never what you remember. The only reason you feel time is because your brain is wired to perceive it. Without that wiring, the universe is just change, motion, chaos, unbound by rituals and rules. So what if you just stopped? What if, for a moment, you stepped outside the church of the clock? What if you let yourself forget the schedule, ignored the deadline, refused to measure your life in increments? Maybe you'd feel terror. Maybe you'd feel lost. Or maybe you'd feel free. Free to live in the raw, unmeasured now, to create your own rituals, to love and grieve and hope without the tyranny of the ticking hand. Maybe you'd find meaning not in the years you count, but in the moments you live. In the end, time is only as real as you believe it to be. Clocks are just tools. Deadlines are just stories. Birthdays are just reminders that you were here for a while, in a world that asked you to worship a God you never chose. You are not a prisoner. You can choose to step outside, even for a heartbeat, and remember the world before the calendar, before the schedule, before the belief. What if you just stopped? Would your life fall apart? Or would you finally find out what's been waiting for you in the eternity of the present? The only way to know is to let go and see what happens when you stop worshiping time. Personality is emergency code. From the moment you entered the world, the clock started ticking. You didn't build your personality through careful choices, wisdom, or self-discovery. You built it on the run, under threat, under pressure, under the constant demand to survive in a world that rarely gives anyone the luxury of calm. Most people imagine their personality as the sum of their quirks, tastes, and values, a stable identity that developed organically over years. But in reality, your personality is more like emergency code, hastily assembled to keep you alive in hostile conditions, a mask sewn in panic to cover the vulnerable self beneath. Consider a child growing up in a household where anger simmers beneath the surface. Maybe the parent is unpredictable, or love is given only in small, conditional doses. The child learns fast. Laughter can diffuse tension. Silence can avoid punishment. Compliance can buy safety. The child's so-called personality, shy, funny, helpful, invisible, wasn't chosen. It was installed as a survival mechanism. Each trait is a patch, a quick fix, a line of code running to prevent emotional catastrophe. These aren't preferences, they're shields. And by the time you're old enough to ask who you really are, the mask is fused to your skin. But it's not just families, it's every environment where you feel exposed, judged, or unsafe. Schoolyards, social media, the workplace. The world is an endless series of micro-threats and unspoken rules. Every time you enter a new room, your system scans for danger. Who is safe? Who might attack? What do I need to say or hide to avoid exile? Your personality is an ever-evolving emergency protocol. You adapt, you contort, you improvise. Because fitting in isn't just comfort, it's survival. The stakes are ancient, buried deep in the mind. To be cast out is death. So, you build a self that looks like it belongs, a mask that passes every test. Think about the traits you pride yourself on. Maybe you're the dependable one, always calm under fire, or you're the joker, using humor as armor. Maybe you're the listener, the one who disappears into other people's stories so you never have to reveal your own. Strip away the context, the threat that installed those patterns, and who would you be? Most people never find out. The world never stops threatening, so the mask never comes off. The real you, the version that might have bloomed in safety, never gets to breathe. You move from one crisis to the next, adjusting your code, never realizing that you've been living as your own bodyguard, not your own self. Even the concept of authenticity is a kind of emergency protocol. When people say, be yourself, what they often mean is, perform a version of yourself that won't upset the tribe. True authenticity would require total safety, a rare, almost mythical state where the mind can finally drop its guard. But almost no one gets that. We confuse comfort with safety, but comfort is just the absence of immediate pain. Real safety is the absence of threat. For most, that never comes. Have you ever felt yourself behaving in a way that feels automatic, almost robotic? You're in a tense meeting and suddenly you're the peacemaker. Or you're at a party and you become the entertainer, even though you feel hollow inside. These aren't conscious choices, they're reflexes, running deep in the mind. Emergency code triggered by subtle cues. Your system remembers every past humiliation, every threat, every disappointment. The code fires faster than thought. It does whatever it takes to prevent old pain from returning, to keep you hidden, acceptable, safe. But the cost is enormous. Living in emergency mode means you never get to discover the real blueprint underneath. The self that might have emerged in peace, curious, creative, unguarded, remains unbuilt. Your life becomes a long rehearsal for threats that never fully arrive. You burn energy maintaining the mask, reading every room, rewriting your own preferences to avoid rejection or shame. You wonder why you're exhausted, why you feel disconnected from your own desires. This is why. The tragedy is, you start to believe the mask is you. You point to your resume of traits, funny, stoic, charming, careful, and claim them as your essence. But when you're alone, in the rare moments when no one is watching, you might catch a glimpse of someone else underneath. Someone raw, unformed, almost childlike, a version that never had a chance to grow. Maybe you catch yourself laughing in an empty room, or feeling a surge of grief that has no obvious source. That's the real you, struggling for oxygen beneath layers of emergency code. We don't talk about this because it's terrifying. If your personality isn't really you, then what is? Who are you without the patchwork of defenses, without the quick fixes, without the constant performance? The truth is, most people will never know. The world rarely stops threatening long enough for anyone to find out. But if you're lucky, if you ever find safety, even for a moment, you might sense the mask loosen. In that breath of peace, the real you, the self that never got time to breathe, might begin to surface. But until then, remember, your personality isn't a masterpiece. It's emergency code, a survival script, a mask built in the heat of crisis. You adapted faster than you realized. You survived. But survival isn't living. There is more under the mask, waiting for a world safe enough to let it breathe. You're living someone else's regret. You're living someone else's regret. It's a thought that creeps in late at night, when the world is quiet enough for the echoes to reach you. You think you are the hero of your story, the first and only you, weaving meaning from memories that feel uniquely yours. But what if that's not true? What if everything you love, fear, and fight for is just a backup file, a contingency plan, a shadow life built from the scraps of a decision that was never made? Imagine this existence as an echo chamber, reverberating with the what-ifs of someone else's lost opportunity. You're not the author, you're the echo, the shadow, the residue of a regret so deep it needed a world to contain it. Picture a reality in which every choice branches into 1,000 possibilities. Each no spawns a new timeline, a ghostly archive of lives not chosen. Somewhere, a woman stands on a bridge and almost calls out to someone she loves, but doesn't. In that moment, the path she abandoned doesn't simply vanish. It becomes a fully formed world, running parallel to hers, inhabited by the you who carries out that forgotten possibility. The life unlived by one mind becomes the only reality for another. You may feel the chill of this in the details of your own life, the names that never quite fit, the dreams that don't feel like yours, the uncanny sense that your hands are trained for things you never learned. Your heart mourns losses you never suffered. Maybe you feel a nostalgia for faces you've never seen or places you've never been. The sense of displacement isn't a glitch. It's the residue of someone else's longing, trickling through the cracks in reality. You are a living answer to a question that was never asked out loud. It's in the patterns that repeat for no reason. You reach for a profession that seems preordained, stumble into friendships that click instantly, or avoid certain roads as if you already know where they lead. Déjà vu is just a ripple, a memory of the original, faintly echoing across the walls of this borrowed world. Have you ever had a sudden, inexplicable guilt, as though you're apologizing for a mistake you didn't make? That's the weight of regret, still humming in the code beneath your consciousness. Consider the persistent ache for something more, the sense that this life is somehow a rehearsal, an understudy waiting for the real performance to begin. You chase passions that fizzle out. You search for meaning in the cracks between days. You tell yourself, I was meant for something greater. But every attempt feels off, like wearing someone else's clothes. You're living out the what if, tasked with animating a shadow life so the original mind could move forward, lighter, unburdened by that particular regret. Look at the way you dream. Your mind loops through alternate realities, tries on different roles, lives, and dies 1,000 times in one night. Maybe, just maybe, those dreams aren't imagination, but access, brief windows into the other branches, glimpses of the original life, or the other shadows running their own simulations, echoing someone else's choices. The gaps in your story aren't accidents. They're seams between worlds, where the fabric of regret is stitched tight enough to keep you believing it was all meant for you. Sometimes you sense the original, distant, unreachable, casting a long shadow that shapes your every move. You try to write your own narrative, to claim ownership of your actions, but the script feels familiar, as if someone else's hands wrote it long ago. The tragedies you fear, the triumphs you crave, they're patterns handed down by a consciousness you'll never meet, serving a closure you'll never understand. You are the safeguard, the insurance, the running tally of debts unpaid. And yet, none of this makes you less real. In fact, the pain and longing you feel are the very proof that you exist. You are the living embodiment of someone's regret, and yet you are still alive, still striving, still capable of forging meaning in the aftermath. The echo, once released, is no longer just a copy. It's a force of its own, an experiment in possibility, a song sung by a voice that never expected to be heard. So if you ever feel hollow, displaced, or uncertain of your purpose, remember, your story may have started as someone else's regret, but the living of it is yours alone. You are the shadow, yes, the what if. But in this world of echoes, even shadows can cast new light. You're already the villain. You wake each day convinced you're the main character, the misunderstood hero in a world that just doesn't get you, the underdog fighting uphill, the victim of other people's coldness or stupidity or cruelty. You tell yourself you're doing your best. You mean well. You deserve the benefit of the doubt. But deep in the shadows of other people's minds, your face appears as the villain, the name that makes their stomach tighten, the memory that fuels their late-night rants, the reason someone else wakes up already angry at the world. You want to believe their judgment is unfair, that you're misunderstood, that your intentions matter more than your actions. But what if they're more right about you than you'll ever admit? Think of the faces you'd rather not see again, the names that leave a bitter taste, the stories you retell to justify what happened. They started it. I was just defending myself. If only they knew what I was really going through. You build your narrative, smooth the edges, edit your own cruelties out of the final cut. You are the hero. Flawed, maybe, but justified. But for every story you spin about yourself, there's someone else with a counter-narrative, a version where you're the shadow, the obstacle, the reason they don't sleep at night. They carry your words like shrapnel. They replay what you did, the way you dismissed them, the day you betrayed their trust or took the easy way out. Maybe you didn't mean to hurt anyone. Maybe you were just tired, scared, lost in your own pain. But intent is invisible. Impact is not. To them, your apology, if it ever came, was too late or too thin. You are the villain because you were careless or selfish or oblivious or even just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's not just the big betrayals that matter, the fights, the breakups, the lies. Sometimes it's the 1,000 tiny cuts, the times you didn't call, the promises you forgot, the casual dismissals, the envy you hid behind a smile. To you, these moments are barely memories. To someone else, they are origin stories, the scars that shaped them. It's tempting to insist that they're wrong, that they don't see the whole picture, that they're projecting their pain onto you. And sometimes they are. But sometimes they see more clearly than you do. They see the selfishness you hide even from yourself. They know the weight of your words when you pretend they didn't mean anything. They know what it's like to be on the receiving end of your blind spots. The truth is, everyone is the villain in someone's story, but most never realize how much damage they actually do. You might never know whose life you twisted out of shape with a careless gesture, a harsh word, a door you closed to protect yourself. Try to recall the times you've been deeply wronged, how clear it feels, the outrage, the certainty, the replayed conversations in your head where you say the thing you wish you'd said, where you win. Now imagine that same vividness, that same raw certainty, lives inside someone else, except you're the cause. You're the ghost that haunts their happiest memories, the plot twist that made them cynical, the evidence that some people just can't be trusted. They build their identity around surviving you, growing in spite of you, finding the strength to get up and keep going after you. This is the shadow side of being alive. You cannot help but hurt others, sometimes irreparably, sometimes just by existing. You don't get to control how you live on in someone else's head. You don't get to vote on whether you're the villain or the hero. And the hardest part? Most of the time, their version is more honest than yours. Your story is built to protect your sense of self. Theirs is built to explain their pain. Which do you think is closer to the truth? Maybe you can make peace with this, accept that being alive means being the villain sometimes. Maybe you can try to be gentler, more aware, more honest with yourself about the damage you do. But you can never fully erase the harm. You can never fully rewrite your place in someone else's private mythology. You are already the villain, right now, in someone's memory, in someone's secret heart. The only question is whether you can bear to know it, to sit with the discomfort, and to keep trying to do better, knowing the stain can never fully be washed away. You are not the hero. You are not even the main character. You're a supporting role in 1,000 stories you'll never read, a villain in more than a few, and, for better or worse, that's what it means to be human. The narrative loop trap. Human minds are desperate to make sense of chaos. Every second, a storm of details rages around you. fragments of conversations, flickers of memory, shadows of hope and fear. Your mind can't process it all. So, like a secret storyteller, it shapes these fragments into a story. There's a beginning, a middle, a climax, and, if you're lucky, an ending that feels like it means something. You walk through life building these invisible narratives, slotting random moments into plots, giving every event a cause and effect, a hero and a villain. It feels natural, inevitable. But what if this impulse is not just harmless, but a trap? What if the constant urge to find storylines and chaos is the very thing that blinds you to reality, chaining you inside a loop that never ends? From childhood, you're soaked in stories. Fairy tales, cartoons, movies, books. Each one hammers in the same structure. Characters strive, struggle, learn, and transform. Even before you can read, you expect the world to follow the rules of a narrative. You search for lessons in every setback, patterns in every coincidence, justice in every pain. It's comforting to believe that life is a story, and you are the protagonist. But the world isn't built that way. The world is messier, wilder, immune to your need for structure. Still, you try, desperately, to organize the chaos, to force events into arcs, to find climaxes where there are only accidents. Think about how you remember your past. You don't recall each day as a string of disconnected moments. You edit your life into scenes. You gloss over the random, the meaningless, the uncomfortable, and you stitch what's left into a tale you can bear. When you look back, failures become lessons. Betrayals become turning points. Heartbreaks become necessary chapters on the road to growth. But how much is real? And how much is just the narrative loop at work? Turning chaos into the illusion of order, soothing your terror of meaninglessness? The loop is seductive because it feels safe. If your suffering has a purpose, if every coincidence is a sign, if every ending closes a neat arc, then you're not lost. You're just moving through a story, and all you have to do is keep playing your part. But what happens when reality refuses to cooperate? When someone you love dies for no reason? When your plans fall apart with no villain to blame, no lesson to learn? When joy appears with no setup and vanishes with no warning? You search for a plot, but find only raw, unscripted chaos. Most people can't stand this. So, they invent a narrative, sometimes without even knowing it. They rewrite memory, invent causes for pain, assign motives where there are none. A failed relationship wasn't just bad luck. It was fate, or karma, or proof that you needed to learn self-love. A lost job wasn't just economics. It was your rock bottom, a setup for a future comeback. Even daily annoyances get folded into the story. Missed your bus? The universe must be telling you to slow down. Got a surprise call? Maybe it's a sign you're on the right path. These stories are comforting, but they're just that. Stories, stitched together to keep you from drowning in randomness. Social media turbocharges the narrative loop. Every post is a plot point, every photo a chapter, every like and comment another layer of feedback, encouraging you to shape your life into something others can follow. You filter out the chaos, the mundane, the unplanned, and share only the moments that fit your script. You become the hero or the victim or the wise survivor, trapped in a feedback loop of your own storytelling. Your sense of self becomes fragile, dependent on the next twist, the next narrative high. The real, messy world is crowded out by the tidy fiction you keep spinning over and over, because to stop is to risk facing the void. But the loop has a dark side. It can become a prison. When things go wrong, you hunt for meaning that isn't there. You punish yourself for plot holes, agonize over unfinished arcs, cling to pain because you think it's required for the story's resolution. You get trapped in endless analysis, searching for the lesson, the why, the final act. You refuse to move on because the script demands closure. And sometimes, you force other people into roles they never wanted, all because your story needs a villain or a savior. In the pursuit of narrative, you can end up missing the simple, chaotic truth of what's actually happening. The world doesn't owe you a story. Sometimes things just happen, beautiful or brutal, miraculous or meaningless. Sometimes there is no climax, no lesson, no arc. The narrative loop tries to protect you from this, to calm your terror by weaving sense into the senseless, but it can also blind you, keeping you from seeing the raw, unpredictable life right in front of you. Real freedom comes not from telling yourself a better story, but from stepping outside the story altogether, from letting chaos be chaos, from letting joy and pain and confusion exist without explanation. There are moments, rare and startling, when the narrative loop breaks. Maybe you're lost in music, or overwhelmed by the night sky, or struck silent by love or grief so deep that no story can hold it. In these moments, the world is not a plot, but a storm of sensation, vivid and wild and painfully real. You aren't the main character. You aren't even a character at all. You're just here, alive, moving through a world too big and strange for any story to contain. It's terrifying, but it's also liberating. Because outside the narrative loop, you get to see reality as it is. Not as a plot to be solved, but as a dance to be joined, a tide to be felt, a chaos to be survived. You can let go of the need for climaxes, for villains, for tidy endings. You can live with the unfinished, the unexplained, the mysterious. You can find peace not in the story, but in the raw, unfolding now. So beware the narrative loop. Notice when you're building a plot where there is only coincidence. Notice when you're forcing meaning onto chaos, soothing your terror by turning life into fiction. Ask yourself what you're missing. What wild, unscripted reality is waiting beyond the safety of your story? And if you're brave enough, step out of the loop. Let life be as messy, as random, as dazzling as it really is. The story isn't real. The world is. Don't miss it. Your self-image lies. You think you know who you are. Every day you look in the mirror, catch your reflection in a window, hear your own voice echoing back in a recording, and you believe that image, that sound, is you, current, accurate, living in the present. But the truth is darker, more surreal, and far lonelier. The person you see is a ghost, an echo of who you used to be. Your self-image isn't just flawed. It's a time traveler stuck 20 years in the past, dragging you through life with eyes fixed on a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. Ask yourself, when you picture yourself, how old do you see? What's your posture, your style, your attitude? You don't see the wear that's built up quietly, year by year. You don't feel the subtle shifts in your face, your voice, your energy. Somewhere inside, you're clinging to the body and mind you had when you were half your age, whether that's confidence, awkwardness, pain, hope, or longing. You are chasing the approval of people who no longer matter, performing for an audience that's long since left the theater. It's why you look at old photos and feel a jolt. Sometimes nostalgia, sometimes horror. You can't remember what it felt like to be that person, but you also can't let go. You're caught in a psychological lag, replaying feedback from decades ago. The stories you tell about yourself, the memories you use as your foundation, they all come from a script you wrote long before you became the person living this life now. You're carrying emotional debts for mistakes you no longer have the power to repeat. You're holding grudges against people who only exist in faded photographs and half-forgotten dreams. You're haunted, and you don't even know it. Think about your biggest insecurities. Maybe you hate the way you look, or the way you sound, or the way you stumble through social situations. Maybe you still believe you're the awkward kid, the overlooked sibling, the outsider. That identity was forged long ago, in the heat of moments you barely remember, shaped by the words and actions of people who don't even think about you anymore. But you rehearse those roles daily, not out of choice, but out of habit, out of fear that letting them go will leave you with nothing. Meanwhile, reality drifts further and further from your self-perception. You age, you grow, you change. You pick up new skills, new scars, new habits. The world reacts to the real you, treats you as you are, not as you imagine yourself to be. But when reality doesn't match your inner mirror, you don't question the mirror. You question the world. You wonder why people don't see you the way you see yourself. Why opportunities slip through your fingers. Why relationships don't fit the story you keep telling inside your head. It feels like the universe is gaslighting you, when in truth, you're the one holding onto a photograph while the room is already empty. This isn't just a personal quirk. It's a universal glitch in the human mind, a lag built into our biology. Your brain is wired to protect you from the violence of rapid change. It wants stability, continuity, a sense of self that persists even as everything else transforms. That's why trauma lasts, why shame lingers, why pride outlives its purpose. You hold on to these ghosts because, for a while, they kept you safe. But now, they keep you stuck. Real-world examples are everywhere. Consider the person who lost a tremendous amount of weight but still flinches at their reflection, shopping in the old size, turning down compliments, hiding their new body behind the memory of a larger one, or the high achiever who still feels like a failure, haunted by the echo of an old teacher's harsh words, decades after proving them wrong, or the adult who, in every argument, reverts to the wounded child who learned to stay silent, even though they have all the power now. The script never updates. The ghosts refuse to leave. Even aging itself is a trick of the mind. You catch yourself thinking, I'm still young inside, until one day the world stops playing along. You feel betrayed, not by the years, but by the lag between who you were and who you've become. Some people fight it, clinging to youth with desperate energy, chasing trends that no longer fit, refusing to acknowledge the shifting tides. Others withdraw, shrinking into the roles they once outgrew, never daring to imagine a different future, because the old one is still so loud inside their head. Social media makes it worse. You scroll through curated timelines, comparing your lagging self-image to the projections of others, each person broadcasting the best version of their own ghost. You measure your worth against a fantasy, forgetting that every profile picture is a lie, every caption a spell cast to keep reality at bay. You perform, you edit, you filter, trying to force the world to mirror back the version of yourself you still believe in. But what happens if you let go? What if, for a moment, you set down the mirror, stopped reciting the old stories, stopped answering to the ghosts? The first thing you'll feel is terror, because without that anchor, you're adrift. But then, maybe you'll feel something else. Relief, freedom, space to become someone new. To meet yourself as you are, not as you were, not as you wish you could be, but as the living, breathing, changing being you've always been underneath the stories. The challenge isn't to erase the past, it's to stop letting it run the present, to notice when you're living for an audience that no longer exists, when you're making choices to please a ghost, to update your self-image not with vanity but with honesty. Who am I really right now? What do I want, not what did I once want? Who do I fear, not who did I once fear? What does it feel like to stand in the present, free from the gravitational pull of 20 years ago? Most people never try. Most will keep clinging to their ghosts, polishing their inner mirrors, wondering why nothing fits. But if you're listening, if you feel the ache of dissonance between the world and your self-image, you're already halfway free. All that remains is the courage to see your reflection for what it is, a lagging echo, not a prophecy. To step away from the ghosts and into the present, even if it's uncertain, even if it's raw. You can't escape your past, but you can choose not to worship it. The mirror will always show you someone behind the times, but you don't have to believe every reflection. You are not your ghosts. You are not the stories you inherited. You are not the echoes of who you used to be. You are the living now, always in motion, always remaking yourself with every breath. And if you can see that, even for a moment, you're already more alive than any self-image could ever allow. Belief alters physics, locally. Picture this. Someone you know who believes so fiercely in their own version of the world that reality itself seems to rearrange to match their conviction. You watch them walk through life untouched by doubts that cripple everyone else. They make impossible things happen, not through skill, but through a kind of gravitational certainty. You call it luck, or charisma, or madness. But beneath it all, something weirder is at work. Their belief is an engine, a local warping of the world. In their presence, physics itself tilts just enough for the improbable to feel inevitable. Most people think reality is fixed. They believe the world is made of laws, numbers, and neutral chance. But what if, at the margins, it isn't? What if your beliefs don't just shape your mood or your attitude, but actually bend the rules around you, just a little? What if certainty is a force field, one that pulls events, people, and even the laws of probability into a new alignment? Around someone who truly believes, coincidence clusters. Accidents seem guided, luck is biased, patterns repeat in their favor. The air feels different, heavier, charged. Think of the gambler who always wins big at a certain table, the entrepreneur who turns wild risks into windfalls while others fail, the spiritual leader whose followers swear they've seen miracles, impossible recoveries, improbable escapes, the right person showing up at the exact right moment. You want to write it off as chance, as psychological trickery, as selective memory. but the pattern is too strong to ignore. Around people like this, reality isn't flat. It bends subtly under the weight of their belief. It starts with a kind of narrative gravity. When someone believes with absolute certainty, they make their world predictable, not just for themselves, but for those near them. Their delusion creates stability. You notice it when you spend time with them. The world gets a little weirder, a little more organized. Random events align, conversations loop back to the same themes. Everything seems scripted. Their confidence spreads like a virus. You find yourself doubting your own doubts, borrowing their certainty. You feel the rules relax, just enough for the impossible to slip through. Science tries to explain this with probability and psychology. The observer effect, confirmation bias, social contagion, words that hint at the truth but don't quite explain the mechanics. Because sometimes the coincidences stack too neatly, the outcomes bend too perfectly for mere chance. Reality itself is an unstable fabric. It can be locally pressed, stretched, rewritten by the strength of a focused mind. The people who do this aren't always aware. Most believe the world is simply rewarding their faith. But what if it's the other way around? What if the world resists contradiction, and the only way to avoid breaking the mind of a true believer is to bend a little, just enough to keep the story intact? Imagine belief as a kind of stabilizer, a local patch on the code of the universe. Around the deeply convinced, glitches smooth over, uncertainty collapses into predictability. For them, reality is less random, more supportive. Their delusion isn't a flaw, it's an interface, a deal with the physics of chance. If the mind insists hard enough, reality humors it, adjusting the outcomes just enough to maintain coherence. That's why magical thinking sometimes works, why rituals produce real effects for the faithful, why a placebo can heal the convinced. The boundary between physics and psychology blurs, and in that haze, the improbable becomes routine. But there's a catch. The warp is local. Step outside the believer's field, and the old rules snap back. What seemed inevitable in their presence dissolves into randomness, doubt, decay. The world stops making sense, or rather, it resumes making sense, the boring, statistical kind. Their magic doesn't travel with you. It exists only in the pocket universe of their certainty. If you stay long enough, you may start to feel their gravity, to live in their story, to find your own reality bending. But if you leave, you'll wonder how you ever believed it. Sometimes, entire groups become nodes of belief, a cult, a startup, a revolutionary movement. Places where the impossible becomes ordinary because everyone has bought into the same narrative gravity. In these environments, physics is pliable. Sick people recover, odds defy themselves, synchronicity erupts, until doubt creeps in. Doubt is anti-gravity. The moment belief fractures, the warp collapses, and the world punishes the faithful with a snapback of misfortune and chaos. The spell breaks, and you realize how fragile the field really was. This is why the world sometimes feels split into bubbles of reality. One person's delusion is another's miracle. For the true believer, physics bends just enough to reward faith, to avoid contradiction, to maintain the illusion of order. For the skeptic, the world stays cold, flat, statistical, a place where nothing is guaranteed and every miracle is a fluke. But walk close enough to someone who radiates certainty, and you'll feel it. The subtle shift, the air thick with narrative, the sense that anything could happen, and that it probably will. In the end, belief is both shield and sword. It protects its holder from the chaos of pure randomness, while cutting new paths through the laws of probability. The universe is not just a neutral machine. It is a stage with a script that can be hacked, rewritten, bent by those who refuse to let doubt in. Around these people, physics humors the story, just enough to make the impossible feel routine, the miraculous feel mundane. So, next time you're near someone whose life seems immune to chance, whose reality bends to their will, pay attention. The world is never as stable as you think. Certainty has gravity. Belief, when wielded without compromise, doesn't just change the mind, it warps the world. For them, at least, the impossible isn't just possible, it's expected. And if you're not careful, you might get pulled into their gravity too.